This from Yeti to start the show. Yeti writes, Kevin, I'm a Baylor grad who just moved to the area from Texas. I started listening recently, and I think you and other Washington fans have short memories. RG3's rookie season was equal to Jaden's rookie season, and his knee injury killed his career. Daniels takes big hits and is one unlucky big hit away from trouble. Both guys took the league by storm in identical ways. I'd back off Jaden's career being on a path to the Hall of Fame already. You and your audience have forgotten that you've already been down this road, and you're not alone. How is the kid number 5 after one season? The rest of the league has forgotten the RG3 story, too. Thank you, Yeti, for that. I'll get to my response on that in a few minutes. Man, a lot of response to the Jaden ranking at number 5. And actually, we took a lot of calls yesterday on Jaden's ranking being appropriate and not too high. In fact, a few people said it should be even higher. But a lot of the conversation we had on phone calls yesterday, Max, was about Lamar Jackson being ranked below Joe Burrow and even below Josh Allen as well. But in just going through a lot of the emails and tweets after yesterday's show, it seems like a lot of people think Jalen Hurts was really the controversy on that list, ranked at number 9, that wasn't nearly high enough. I don't know, man. I think Jalen Hurts being a top 10 quarterback is, and closer to 10 than 5 seems right to me. Jalen Hurts is a clutch performer. There is no doubt about that. But I don't think his overall skill set and talent level is at the level of the guys in the top 4 or top 5 or even a Stafford, even a Herbert, to be honest with you. I think if you were starting a team, you'd probably still take Herbert over Hurts. It could be the draft status with Hurts. Ultimately, out of all those guys in the top 10, only one wasn't a first-round pick, and only 2 weren't top half of the first-round picks. Goes to show you that more times than not, if you're going to get a top-flight quarterback, whether at the elite level or in that top 10 area, you got to draft one in the top half of the first round. 2 guests on the show today. Cody Benjamin from CBS Sports will join me at 11 a.m. Cody put together for CBSSports.com yesterday a ranking of the NFL coaches 1 through 32. We talked at the end of the show yesterday, did we crown, Jaden Daniels too quickly? That was from a few weeks ago. And then we did have we crowned the organization a bit too quickly after just 1 year? And it's a different conversation because Jaden's clearly elite at this point, in my opinion, at what he does, where Adam Peters and his staff and Dan Quinn and his staff aren't at the top levels of the league. But they may get there, but that first year was a pretty good year. Cody Benjamin, I always enjoy having him on the show. He'll join us at 11 a.m. and we'll talk about his coaches list and other NFL topics. Linnell will join me at 12. I was in the car last night and I had Linnell on, and he was breaking down Wizards Summer League games like nobody can. He was into it. I love Linnell. He's going to join me at 12. We're going to rank the young Wizards players in terms of the most likely to least likely to become a future All-Star. We'll do that at 12. Garrett Wilson signed a contract extension. We'll get to that on the show today. But I want to start, before I get to Yeti's email, with a quick what do you got? So after James Wood was eliminated from the home run derby last night, he was first up and had 14 in the normal round and then 2 extras in the bonus round. He did not make it to the semifinals, to the Final Four. Hit a couple of bombs, that's for sure. But after he was out, I had no interest in watching the home run derby. I saw the highlights this morning of the kid from Seattle, doing a really good job. But my wife told me we should watch this documentary that just came out on HBO called My Mom, Jane. And I have to tell you, an hour and a half later, I was impressed with how well it was done, but also stunned at the entire story. For those of you who don't know who Jane Mansfield is, Jane Mansfield was one of these pinup girls in the 1950s and 60s, an absolute drop-dead beauty. And she eventually acted, was in many movies, and then she was killed in a car accident at 34 years old in the South in Mississippi as they were on their way to New Orleans from a show that she was doing. Two others in the car were killed in this accident, and three of her children were in the back seat, and all of them survived. And one of those children that survived was Mariska Hargitay. I don't know how many of you know who Mariska Hargitay is. She has been a mainstay for a quarter century on NBC's show Law and Order. I don't watch Law and Order. I am familiar with Mariska Hargitay. I know who she is, and I knew she was Jane Mansfield's daughter. I did know that. I just don't watch the show. But apparently she's been an incredible actress on this show for, since 1999. Like, it's coming up on 25, 26 years. She was 3 years old and in the back seat of this car when it was involved in a terrible accident in 1967 where her mother was killed along with her mother's husband at the time. This was, in that moment, husband number 3, but significant other number 4 since she had become a star. All 3 children, Mariska and her 2 brothers, survived. And, much of the documentary is about the mother and her career. Jane Mansfield was, considered in the day like one of these pinup blonde women but had the dumb blonde persona. But it was the New York Times that at one point wrote the smartest dumb blonde in Hollywood. She spoke 5 languages and played prolifically both the piano and violin. I didn't know this about her. She was incredibly smart and had very high intellect, but played that role. And in fact, Mariska Hargitay in this documentary is as much about her, Mariska Hargitay, and her coming to grips with who her mother was, and then a massive twist in the whole story towards the end of this documentary that was really pretty shocking. If you were watching it and you didn't know the story, and I did not. But she was very much played that role of ditzy blonde, actress of that time. But she was the opposite of that. So she married Mickey Hargitay, who was Mr. Universe. He was from Hungary. This was her second marriage. Her first marriage was to a dude named Paul Mansfield. She had 1 child with Paul Mansfield. And then, and I don't want to give away the big dramatic turn to this documentary, but Mickey Hargitay, in lieu of his wife's death, raised these 3 children, 2 sons and Mariska Hargitay. And they loved their father, and he apparently was a terrific man, a very loving man. And Jane Mansfield went on to get married a couple more times to some bad guys, some abusive men. She also had an affair with an Italian entertainer during a period in which she was separated from her husband, Mickey Hargitay. And that's where I will kind of leave off, because there is a twist to this story involving Mariska Hargitay Again, the daughter, who was 3 years old and in the back seat, and by the way, was not rescued immediately from the accident. She had slid underneath the passenger seat during the accident. As one of her brothers awoke in the ambulance on the way to the hospital, he said, "Where's my sister?" And they said, "Who? We have 2 boys, you and your brother." They went back and they found her underneath the seat, 3 years old. So her brother pretty much perhaps saved her life. Who knows? They would have probably eventually found her as they towed the vehicle at some point. But she was concussed as a 3-year-old during the accident. But there is a twist to this story that I don't think, if you don't know the story, you don't see coming. And man, does it get emotional and crazy. Really interesting story. It's funny because afterwards, like typically you do after you've watched something and it's a story that you're not familiar with, you start deep diving into all of these characters. And what I found was just one glowing review of this documentary, which came out just about a month ago, I guess, on HBO, maybe 3 weeks ago on HBO. Some of you are probably huge Law and Order fans and know exactly who Mariska Hargitay is and knew that her mother was Jane Mansfield. I did know that part. I think Tommy told me that at one point. Tommy's like an expert on pinup girls from the 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s when they had them. But I would recommend My Mom Jane to anybody out there that is looking for an hour and a half to kill with a show. This isn't, 9 episodes or 3 years to catch up on. It's an hour and a half. And there is, there are some awkward moments in this, and the subjects themselves aren't necessarily compelling figures in any way. Her brothers are very shy, at least one of them painfully shy. But there are other siblings involved. That'll be the hint. My Mom Jane, a 2025 documentary just produced, just out. She was the director and producer, Mariska Hargitay was, of this. It's on HBO. Really good. All right. Back to Yeti's email. Yeti wrote, "I'm a Baylor grad who just moved to the area from Texas. I started listening recently, and I think you and other Washington fans have short memories. RG3's rookie season was equal to Jaden's rookie season, and his knee injury killed his career. Daniels takes big hits and is one unlucky big hit away from trouble. Both guys took the league by storm in identical ways. I'd back off Jaden's career being on a path to the Hall of Fame already. Nobody has actually uttered Hall of Fame in Jaden Daniels. Actually, that's probably not true.
There's one guy, and he's on the Sports Junkies, and his name is Eric Bickle. Other than that...
Oh, really?
Of course.
So, I mean, look, would I bet on Jaden Daniels making it to the Hall of Fame if I was presented with, and some decent odds? Because you'd have to get some odds. He's not a favorite to make the Hall of Fame at this point after one season. I would probably say, if I were an odds maker, you put it at it's close to even money, but it's probably like plus 180, plus 200, something like that. I would bet that. I would definitely bet that. Hall of Fame, there's a long way to go to the Hall of Fame. The odds are probably longer than that. It's probably like plus 300. Something like that, if we're being realistic. He then continues, "You and your audience have forgotten that you've already been down this road, and you're not alone. How is the kid number 5, the number 5 quarterback after just one season? The rest of the league has forgotten RG3's story too." Yeah, yesterday, the big topic in a lot of football conversations for sure was ESPN's ranking of the top 10 quarterbacks. And it wasn't, beat reporters. It wasn't Jeremy Fowler or, Adam Schefter's rankings. This was, after Fowler put together this annual survey of coaches, front office execs, and scouts on their thoughts. So it's kind of the compilation of expert, true in the sport opinion of the quarterbacks. By the way, the off-ball linebacker list is out today, and we've got a player on that list, so I will get to that as well. So, look, first of all, this is, kind of a combination of the people who think that we have crowned Jayden Daniels too early, and it's an additional sort of take, which we've gotten, a couple of times. It was Wale, I think, last week, who was asked by Cam Newton. Was it Cam Newton's podcast?
Yep.
That Wale was on?
Sure was.
Where he did a pretty good job of explaining the differences between Jayden Daniels and RG3. I mean, there are massive differences. I mean, Yeti, when you say their rookie seasons were equal, or that, both guys took the league by storm in identical ways, they both took the league by storm in their rookie seasons in terms of attention, in terms of, jersey sales, excitement about a young, dynamic quarterback. For RG3, remember, there was this added wrinkle that the Shanahans had designed an offense that was totally unique for the time in the NFL. People had run, zone read and had the option in certain packages, typically in the red zone. Cam Newton the year before was running the ball much more for a quarterback on designed runs and on option runs, but it wasn't a part of the offense. It was more a part of kind of a red zone or a short yardage package. Nobody had done what Washington had done in 2012 at the NFL level, which was essentially make, college style football a third of their overall offense, a quarter to a third of their overall offense. And they did it because RG3 was not ready to play traditional NFL quarterback football. He just was totally unpolished and rough around the edges when it came to, pocket passing and reading defenses and processing quickly. He had a great arm, had a big arm, but they installed something that would allow him to get on the field his rookie year. And there was a lot to, RG3's rookie season that was about his running ability and the dual threat nature to the attack, which was, again, unique for the NFL. Of course, we had seen it in college for years and at the high school level for years. And, people even had a difficult time. People who didn't follow college football had a difficult time even identifying what it was. I mean, I remember there were really, qualified, highly thought of analysts who were referring to it as, oh my God, Washington's installed the wishbone. It was not the wishbone. They didn't know what they were looking at. They were calling it the Wildcat. They had no idea. But it was, it was a new formation in the NFL, which was the pistol, and they turned RG3 into a dual threat quarterback, which meant, as Mike Shanahan and Kyle Shanahan said many times, especially after they were gone, it was the introduction of 11-on-11 football at the NFL level. 11-on-11 meaning if the quarterback is a potential runner or the runner, 10 are blocking versus when he hands it off to a running back, 9 are blocking. So it's really 10-on-11 football, the running back and the 9 that are blocking. But when the quarterback is involved as a runner and you got 10 blockers, it's 11-on-11. But anyway, so in terms of the excitement around both players, I think the seasons were very identical and very similar. Now, RG3 season started 3-6. Jayden Daniels season started 7-2. Washington was clearly at the halfway mark of the season, a playoff contender, if not, and some of us believe this, a threat because of the way he was playing to win playoff games, plural. That was not the nature of RG3's rookie season here in 2012. They were 3-6. They had to win 7 games in a row to end the season to finish 10-6 and get to the postseason. Now, the way his team was rolling into the postseason in 2012, there was a lot of thought. I was on board with this. His health was an issue, of course, but he had played well against Dallas in the season finale to win the division and clinch a playoff spot, that Washington was a dangerous team in those NFC playoffs. They were up 14-0 against Seattle in the wild card round before he, went down in, a clump on that terrible turf in a game in which they had a really good chance to win. They would have gone on the following week and played Atlanta. I think they would have had a shot to win that game had he stayed upright. And then it would have been San Francisco in the NFC Championship game at Candlestick. That would have been a tougher situation, similar to what Washington ran into with Philadelphia in the NFC Championship game. But the seasons were different team-wise. But you are right, Yeti, and everybody's right that says that the excitement that Washington fans felt in 2012 was identical to the excitement we felt last year. But that's where the comparisons of their seasons end. Both players were completely different players. We know that. We all know that. Jayden Daniels was an advanced, polished, ready for the NFL and ready to play everything that a quarterback needs to play at the NFL level the moment he walked into the league last year. RG3 was a pile of clay that needed to be molded and needed to be tweaked just to get onto the field. And then stylistically, the obvious difference is what I just said. Jayden was an advanced and understood the pocket passing game. He was exceptional at reading defenses, super quick processor, super quick release, could make every throw with touch, with accuracy, as one NFL coordinator said in the write-up of JD as number 5 on the list on ESPN yesterday. But beyond that, he was flat out a better playmaker than RG3 was. Look, I don't know that if you lined them both up next to each other and had them run a 40, RG3 wouldn't finish maybe a step ahead of Jayden. That's fine. But Jayden had the peripheral, athletic vision. And Jayden is able to avoid the hits. He's got the ability to make people miss. RG3 was straight line. He was a straight line athlete. He was a track athlete. He couldn't see peripherally. That's why he took so many big hits and so many awkward, ugly hits. He was not, a guy that was comfortable sliding or getting down or making people miss. I mean, how many times do we see Jayden, basically toying with a defender and then just sidesteps out of bounds? Now, Jayden, to Yeti's point, took some big hits last year. And he'll take some big hits to try to, move the chains or to try to keep the game, alive. His build is a little bit different than RG3's, but two totally different players. I can't emphasize that enough. It's not the first time we've talked about it. Just completely different players as rookies. The only thing that was the same about their rookie seasons was the excitement that both generated for not just our fan base, but for NFL fans nationwide. But RG3, and by the way, I haven't even approached the conversation of leadership qualities, of locker room personality. Obviously, look, I don't want to say we know for sure, but after one season, it would appear that Jayden Daniels' primary interest is football and getting better at football and doing whatever it takes to win. RG3 was trademarking hashtags and slogans and was all in for week one. Also, in defense of RG3, he unfortunately was playing in a terrible organization with a horrendous owner who essentially wanted RG3, who was 20 years or 25 years at that point probably more than that, his junior, to be his best friend. And he enabled RG3 in a way that was incredibly destructive to the relationship he had with his head coach, his offensive coordinator, and others. And I've said this many times, as much as RG3 is completely self-absorbed, as we've all learned over the years, and really a little bit lacking, not a little bit, a lot lacking in self-awareness. The situation here was the worst possible situation for him to come into ownership-wise. It was a very good situation to come into coaching-wise. But he couldn't see that. Dan obviously couldn't see it. Bruce couldn't see it. And, he was injury prone too. I mean, that was a very serious injury that he had. And obviously was never really able to recover for a lot of reasons from that. But yeah, look, you're right, Yeti, in that Jaden's career is not Hall of Fame already. You're right that the seasons were identical from a fan reception standpoint, but you're wrong. That's where the comparisons end. And yeah, I mean, I don't think the rest of the league has forgotten RG3. I think the rest of the league knows a lot more about the RG3 story. I think a lot of people in the league understood that, yes, the injuries ultimately were catastrophic, but it was going to be a tough road for him regardless because of what his focus was, which was more on, his own brand and the situation he was in Washington with Dan as his owner. I mean, they basically ran one of the greatest compilation of individual coaches on one staff together. They essentially ran it away for the choice to move forward with RG3 having more say in what was going on. His best future would have been with that coaching staff for sure. All right. Want to get to this Garrett Wilson contract. We'll also get to this linebacker list that came out this morning. Cody Benjamin will join us at 11 a.m. to talk about his ranking of the coaches in the NFL. We'll find out where Dan Quinn landed on that list. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980 and the team980.com. From a really good friend of mine, long-time friend of mine, the way you've been slurping all over Jaden, it does seem like you already have him fitted with, it's not a yellow jacket, Ted. It's a gold jacket. Jesus. The yellow jacket. Dummy. I would wager on him making the Hall of Fame at this point. What do you think? I think like plus 300 seems like the right odds for that. Maybe it's a longer shot than that.
I don't know, man. Like, given to this point, many, of course, like they called CJ Stroud's season the greatest season that any rookie's ever had. They did it for Big Ben, I believe, and it's just like I don't know, man. It's tough. I think plus 300 I would take those odds in spades.
Wouldn't that be interesting if like a shop? I mean, you never have, obviously. The futures do not include 15-year futures. They'd get to hold your money for too long. Anyway, whatever. I think he had a season that was all-time great for a rookie, and everything he did last year is perfect for today's league, and everything he did last year was at such a high level that even if he fell off a little bit on all of those things, he'd still be an excellent quarterback. He was elite last year. So, how about Garrett Wilson? By the way, I think a on the verge, if you don't believe it, on the verge superstar at wide receiver. He just finished his third year. He was the 10th pick in the 2022 draft out of Ohio State. Justin Fields, by the way, was his quarterback at Ohio State. They are reunited in New York for the Jets. Last year, he had Aaron Rodgers. I mean, the year before, Rodgers gets hurt on the fourth play. He's had I think he's played with like 7 quarterbacks in his first 3 seasons. 101 catches last year with Rodgers healthy for the duration. 1,104 yards, 7 touchdowns. There was not a lot of love, apparently, at the end of the year between Wilson and Rodgers was moving on anyway, with Aaron Glenn becoming the new coach. I think Garrett Wilson is an absolute stud. Like, I think that this guy at 24 years old, we're going to be talking about him. It depends on quarterback play. There have been very few. Devontae Adams is one in recent years. Mike Evans has had a couple of, opportunities with okay quarterbacks, but he also had Brady. Not every receiver needs a great quarterback, but it would be nice to see Garrett Wilson end up with at least some consistency at quarterback, as long as that quarterback can play a little bit. But I think he's a stud. I mean, I think he is legit, top 10, but a few years from now, we'll be talking about as a top 5 kind of a guy. So Adam Schefter reported yesterday that he got a 4-year, $130 million contract extension that makes him, currently one of the highest paid receivers in the NFL. Although, the $32.5 million average is the extension, average. He still has another full season on his rookie deal. He did get $90 million guaranteed, the 4th most in a wide receiver's contract in NFL history. It's an interesting deal. Like, I was thinking about it this morning, and I was looking at, his trajectory, and I was wondering, did he sign this deal too early, or did he take too little? Right now, his average on the extension at $32.5 million a year would put him at 5th in the NFL. And again, the $90 million guaranteed is the 4th most in NFL history. Chase Jefferson and CeeDee Lamb have all gotten more in guaranteed money. His $90 million in guaranteed is $6 million ahead of what A.J. Brown signed for. He's 24 years old. I bet you there will be, and I haven't read a lot of the reaction, I bet you there will be some criticism of Wilson taking this deal right now, because when we get to the extension part, that $32.5 million might not even be top 10 in average annual. But taking $90 million guaranteed, there's something to be said for, that kind of money, like total blank you money, and you don't have to worry about an injury derailing that opportunity. So it's a good deal. Now, of course, for us, we think about it in terms of Terry McLaurin's deal, which I would have to think we are within a week of definitely having news reports about where they are, where Terry and the team are on this deal. So two things. Number one is, what does this deal mean for Terry McLaurin? I actually, in many ways, think it's helpful for him, but not in the slam dunk way that many people have suggested, I think, at least on social media to me, because they're two completely different players. Terry's about to turn 30, and Garrett Wilson is 24 years old. I would also, and I think you could make the case that while they've had similar starts, the 1,000-yard seasons with bad quarterback play, although Aaron Rodgers did not play badly last year, okay? That's just not an accurate way to describe it. But I think the eye test tells me that Garrett Wilson has elite-level potential. Like, I don't know about Chase or Jefferson, but I think at the very top of the tier below that. And I think it's not there yet. We've got to see a better system. He's in a bad organization. That's part of some of the issues. But to catch 101 balls last year on a team that was dysfunctional at times is pretty damn impressive. What a route runner. He does put it on the ground a little bit. He will drop a few, but I've said this about Terry before. I love Terry. I do. Terry's best season reception-wise, with also poor quarterback play until last year, was his second year when he had 87 catches. 87. He's never threatened 100 catches. He's been in the 70s 3 times, in the 50s his rookie year once, and last year he had 82 receptions, which I think was 19th in the NFL in receptions. But 13 touchdowns last year, second in the league. I don't know that this is a deal that gives either side any kind of significant leverage. The only thing I would say about this deal is if the team thought of Terry more in the T. Higgins, DJ Moore category, meaning less than $30 million per year, somewhere around $28 million a year, 50, 60, guaranteed. I think this raises the floor. And by the way, I don't think that the floor should have been any lower than this to begin with. And I'm not suggesting that I know something about the team's offers at this point. But I wonder if, Terry's been in that, I'm not Chase and I'm not Jefferson, but I'm definitely a top 5, average annual on this deal at 32, 33, somewhere in that range. And the team was more not like at 30, but like, yeah, look, T. Higgins is the number 2 in Cincinnati, but he's really a number 1 receiver almost anywhere else. And he just signed a deal that pays him 28, 0.75 a year. That's what we see more for you. We see more in the guaranteed area of 50 to 60, something like that. DJ Moore is at 27 million a year. He actually got a lot. The total guarantee was 82. Fully guaranteed was more like 50. I think it raises the floor to a minimum of 30 and probably guaranteed money. Garrett Wilson getting 90. I think Terry's going to get 70 million guaranteed. And that's really the most important number, fully guaranteed. So that's what I would say, that they're not comps really at all because of the age difference. And I would even argue because of what Garrett Wilson's upside is. Terry's upside is not Chase Jefferson. Okay. Garrett Wilson's might not be either, but it's just short of that at 24 years old. All right, I think we're within a week. I think we'll start getting some news perhaps later this week, reports. Somebody's going to break something at some point in terms of the state of the negotiations. We are 1 week away from veterans reporting to training camp. Everybody's back now. Everybody's prepping. Everybody's serious about it. The only thing that I will, just emphasize is if this is more about the style than the actual numbers, meaning Adam Peters coming from San Francisco, where, with more recent contract extensions, Bosa, Kittle, Ayuk, those deals were done on August 29th, August 30th, and September 4th. If it's more about we like playing the waiting game and we think it benefits us, and again, I don't think this Garrett Wilson contract is a hurtful contract for, Washington if stylistically they are waiting it out. I just don't think they're super comparable in players because of the two things that I've discussed. But I would certainly expect something before Tuesday in the way of an update. And let's hope it gets done. I don't want Terry to miss camp. It's certainly not going to kill him if he missed some camp. I think, the more likely possibility is a hold in versus a holdout because it's $50K a day, which the team cannot forgive. There may be some loopholes. There may be some ways around that. If he ended up missing, a week's worth of camp and you're talking about $350,000 in fines, something like that. Would they be able to just tack that on to the contract and include that into the extension that they eventually get done? I don't know. But I would expect, something to get done. I would bet on an extension by a week from today. And if we don't have it, it's not the end of the world. I think they'll continue to try to hammer things out. And I do think that the odds still tilt in favor heavily of a contract extension in time for Terry to be ready to play the season opener on September 4th, September 7th against the Giants at home. And if he doesn't get it, he's still going to play in that season opener against the Giants because he's under contract for one more season. All right, when we come back, there's a new list out. It's for off-ball linebackers, and one Washington player made the list. Tell you who that is when we come back. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980 and the team980.com.
All right, here's what's happening on this July 15th. The Washington Commanders have made an announcement that the team will be retiring Art Monk's number 81 in Week 9 against the Seattle Seahawks. The team will be wearing their Super Bowl era throwbacks that released last week, and the Redskins legend still holds the team's career reception record and holds the team record for career receiving yards. We've also got a wide receiver extension, and no, it is not Terry McLaurin. Former Ohio State Buckeye Garrett Wilson has agreed to a 4-year extension with the New York Jets worth $130 million and includes $90 million in guarantees. Shamar Stewart is weighing his options and could look to make a return to college. The Bengals' first-round pick is currently in a contract dispute with the team over language regarding financial guarantees. Stewart is working out with his old college team, the Texas A&M Aggies, and believes that there is a path back to the college level. Last night, Cal Raleigh wins the home run derby after facing off against Junior Caminero in the finals. Raleigh becomes the first catcher to win the event and the first Mariner to win since Ken Griffey Jr. went back-to-back in 98 and 99. And finally, the Tampa Bay Rays are being sold for $1.7 billion in a deal agreed in principle by owner Stu Sternberg. The deal is expected to close in September and will keep the Rays in Tampa for the years ahead. This update is sponsored by the Team 980 YouTube page. Just open the app, type in the Team 980, hit subscribe. Kevin Sheehan is live from 10 to 1 and Craig Hoffman from 4 to 7. Don't forget to like the streams and turn on notifications to stay up to date on all things DC sports. And that is what's trending.
Okay. That news just broke. We'll save the linebacker list for a little bit later on in the show. Art Monk is going to have his jersey retired in that Sunday night game, the first of their throwback jerseys against Seattle, Sunday Night Football. Art Monk's 81 will be retired. So before I get to my problem with this, I've said, I've done this list before, but to refresh everybody's memory, the list that I put together a few years back, I had 3 categories for if, this was before they started the process of retiring jerseys. Sammy Baugh was the only jersey retired. And then they went with Bobby Mitchell, after 2020, and then Sean Taylor, followed by Sonny, and followed by Darrell Green. And I had 3 basic categories. I had the no debates, like these 7 jerseys have to be retired. There's no debating whether or not these jersey numbers should be retired. And those numbers were 9, Sonny Jurgensen, already retired. 28, Darrell Green, already retired now. 33, Sammy Baugh, always retired. 42, Charlie Taylor, not retired yet. 44, John Riggins, not retired yet. 49, Bobby Mitchell, retired. And 81, Art Monk, soon to be retired this year. That was the no debate list. The debatable, the jersey numbers that were sort of in play for conversation and very debatable were Joe Theismann's 7, Sean Taylor's 21 at the owner's discretion and that relationship that they had, and his number was retired. Ken Houston's 27, Larry Brown's 43, Chris Hamburger's 55, Joe Jacoby's 66, Russ Grimm's 68, and Sam Huff's 70. That was on the debate list. And then I had a list of another 8 jerseys that were just missed kind of being on the debatable list. Doug Williams, 17, Brian Mitchell's 30, Pat Fisher's 37, Monty Coleman's 51, Dave Butts' 65, Dexter Manley's 72, Gary Clark's 84, and Jerry Smith's 87. So the no debate list, Sonny, Darrell, Sammy, Charlie Taylor, Riggo, Bobby Mitchell, and Art Monk. So I'm glad Art Monk's jersey is, one of the next being retired, but I would have not done it in this order. I would have definitely, Sonny's needed to be retired. I have no problem with Darrell Green's when it went. Sammy Baugh's always was. Bobby Mitchell's was long overdue for so many reasons. But of the remaining 3 on my no debate list, Charlie Taylor, Riggo, and Art Monk, I think either Charlie Taylor or Riggo should have gone before Art. My preference would be that Riggo's gets retired, before those 2. Now, Charlie Taylor is, for those of you who don't know, Charlie Taylor is one of the greatest in the history of the game. He and Art basically own, or they're 1-2 on the list, the franchise list of, passing marks, pass reception marks. I'll give you some of the numbers. Art Monk is number 1 in receptions and number 1 in yards. 14 seasons, not all of them here. But Charlie Taylor's 14 seasons, second on the catch list, second on the yards list. Charlie Taylor's average yards per reception was higher, and he had 79 touchdown catches to Art Monk's 65. Gary Clark is pretty much third in all of these categories. And Santana Moss and Gary Clark are like 3rd and 4th. Terry's like 5th and moving up. He's never going to catch Monk in receptions or Monk in yards or Charlie Taylor in touchdowns. So the best that he can hope for with another 3 or 4 really good seasons is that he ends up, 3rd on the all-time reception list, 3rd on the all-time yardage list, and potentially 3rd on the all-time touchdown list. Gary Clark's got 58 career touchdowns. He's 3rd on that list. For receivers, Jerry Smith actually had 60 in his career as a tight end. Art Monk should be one of the jerseys retired. I would not have had Art Monk's jersey next. It would have been Charlie Taylor or Riggo, and my preference would have been Riggo. John Riggins might be the all-time legend of this franchise. No player's ever had a postseason rushing the football like he did in 82. He had 4 games, 3 during that crazy, 9-game regular season following the strike in early season in 1982. Nobody's ever carried a team rushing the football through a postseason like Riggo did in 82. And it wasn't just about 82. Riggins was a first-team All-Pro the following year, set the NFL record in the moment for touchdowns, rushing touchdowns in a season. Riggo had outstanding seasons in 79, also in 78, and a really good season in 84 after his first-team All-Pro season as well. There's something very interesting about the legends of Art Monk and John Riggins. They were both, players that made incredible marks on the sport during their time. But neither one of them was consistently a Pro Bowler or an All-Pro player. Art Monk in his very long career, he played 16 years in the NFL. He only made 3 Pro Bowls and 2 All-Pro teams. Riggo, in his 14-year career, only made 1 Pro Bowl and made 1 All-Pro. That was a first team in 83. Keep in mind, Riggo, in an era of running back supremacy. The 70s and 80s, it was about the running backs, not about the quarterbacks, not about the receivers. It was about the running backs, and there were great ones in his conference. Walter Payton, Tony Dorsett, and the list goes on. In terms of, the great backs in the game during his time. He was considered to be a great back, but there, year in and year out, there are only a few spots for the Pro Bowl, only a few spots for the All-Pro team. There were great running backs, but Riggo, for me, for this franchise, should have been next. Should have been next. I have no problem with Darryl and Sonny on the list going in before him. Darrell Green is, the career he had, the length of the career he had, the greatness over a long period of time. He is on the list of the greatest corners in NFL history. Not top 5, and not a lot of top 10 lists either. Riggo's not going to be on the top 5 or top 10 list of running backs of all time. And Riggo often gets put into this fullback category because he was a fullback at times. He was a blocking fullback for Mike Thomas and for Benny Malone when he got here in the 70s. It was really Gibbs, Pardee to a certain degree in 79, turning him loose. 79, the game he had, and that's the thing about Riggo. Every big game that franchise had in 79, in 81 when they were making a run late in the season after starting 0-5, 82, 83, he just came up big each time. Riggo is one of the all-time clutch performers in franchise history. I love Art Monk. When he left the game, when he left here, he was the all-time pass reception leader. I think overall, Riggo's play on the field and his impact on winning was greater than Art Monk's. Not by a lot, but by enough. And I think his legend, his iconic status, look, his personality was completely different than Art's. Art was a recluse. Art was very much, he was not a big personality, talk a lot guy. One of the reasons we all loved him. Riggo, the opposite. Not that he big mouthed people, but Riggo was a personality. I think the organization, which has gotten so much right, I think in this particular case, Riggo should have been next. I think Charlie Taylor should have already gone in. But Monk is there, ahead of Taylor in receptions and yardage, not touchdowns. But I think Riggo should have gone in next. The Sean Taylor thing, I never had an issue with Sean eventually making it in to the retired jersey status. That was owner prerogative, but he should have never gone in when he went in. Sonny, Darryl, Charlie Taylor, Riggo, and Monk should have all gone in before Sean. And I think Riggo should go in before Monk. We'll come back to this. I've got a guess next, but we'll come back to this. I'm curious as to what you guys think. 81 is getting retired, as it should, on November 9th against the Seahawks at home. November 9th or November 2nd, whatever it is. Sunday Night Football. I think Riggo should have been the next one to go in. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980 and the Team980.com. From Foley on Twitter. You're dead wrong. Art should have gone next. Riggo was a one-time Pro Bowler and had a very short run of greatness. Art's was much longer lasting. That's fine. Art had great years. Riggo, by the way, had great years in which he was not named to the Pro Bowl. Again, 70s and 80s football, it was about running backs, okay? And there were so many in the NFC, starting with guys like Walter Payton and Tony Dorsett. You know, in the AFC, you had Franco, you had OJ, you had Earl Campbell. I mean, it was the era of running backs. Riggo was considered also to be more of a fullback at times than a halfback or a tailback. But Riggo is one of the great clutch performers in the history of the game, and certainly in the history of our franchise. Art's jersey 100% should be retired. I just think Riggo's should go in before his. That's all. Cody Benjamin is with us. Cody does a great job for CBSSports.com. He's always one of my favorites to have on because he is very much an astute and thoughtful NFL reporter and analyst. And he put together a list of the best coaches in the NFL, 1 through 32 with 3 tiers. But actually, I'm just curious because you're such an NFL guy and to a certain degree, a bit of an NFL historian. I don't know how closely you follow these things, and maybe sometimes from afar, the perspective is interesting. They just started, Cody, in this franchise a few years ago, retiring jerseys. For many years, it was just Sammy Baugh's 33 that was retired and a bunch of protected jerseys. Well, now they've retired Darrell Green's jersey, Sonny Jurgensen's, Bobby Mitchell's, and Sean Taylor's jersey. And what's left is really a choice between Art Monk, Riggins, and Charlie Taylor, who was a great receiver in the 60s and 70s. Do you have any opinion on who should go next?
Well, thanks for having me back on first. Well, obviously, the minute they announce Art Monk, I mean, you're going to get the wellspring of support for, you know, people feeling like he was overdue and he's been overlooked, you know, long enough from the national perspective. I mean, when you're coming from it locally, when you're coming from it locally, I mean, you might have that different perspective. And I heard a little bit of the tail end of your argument, you know, before you brought me on. And I think it makes sense where you're also looking at what era these guys came from and the impact that they had when they played. And so, I mean, to be honest, I think with the whole retiring numbers thing in general, I know others have raised this point as well. You know, you reach a point where, and some franchises are already dealing with this, once you start retiring every hero from every era, you don't have any more numbers left to retire. And so you end up unretiring them. And so really, you know, what matters is, were they respected for what they did and the importance that they held at that time? I mean, I don't know if I have I wish I could jump on. I mean, I think you made a valid point that maybe one deserves to go in over the other, you know, in terms of Riggins over Monk. I think that right now, just because Art Monk was named, now you're getting that understandable kind of eruption of support. Oh yeah, like this should have happened a long time ago for Art Monk, and you can't really take that away from him.
No, and it's two things. One, you know, you talked about sort of Art Monk being overlooked. It took him 13 years post-retirement to get into the Hall of Fame, and I think Peter King had a lot to do with that. Peter King was very much a believer that Art Monk was just a, you know, possession type of receiver, and Gary Clark was the, you know, the threat offensively that defensive coordinators had to prepare for. And I understand that, but Monk was much more than a possession receiver, and all of us felt like it was way overdue by the time he finally got into it. Riggo was retired for like 6 seasons before he got in. I mean, he wasn't a first ballot, but he was, I think, the second year of eligibility in the Hall of Fame, because I think that's the way NFL people viewed him. But your other point is a good one. I'm going to do this today, and then I'm going to enjoy the fact that Art Monk's jersey is being retired because he's one of the all-time great Redskins, and he was an incredible player and a big part of the 3 Super Bowl wins, even though, ironically, he missed the postseason for their first Super Bowl trip when they beat Miami in Super Bowl 17. He got injured at the end of the regular season, and they did not have him in that postseason. But, a part of a great receiver trio with Gary Clark and Ricky Sanders in the 87 season, the 91 Skins, which I think is up there, if not at the top of the list of the greatest Super Bowl teams of all time. But anyway, we'll move on. I was calling you to do the coach list that you put together, but you just put something out after that about why some NFL execs vote Lamar Jackson outside of the top 5 quarterbacks. So why do they?
Yeah, and we're just going off of, the ESPN released
That's right.
their poll.
We talked a little bit about it.
Yep. And so you take that for what it's worth. But I mean, when you do attach the name, the source as being NFL scouts, coaches, executives, you open your eyes a little bit more.
Yep.
And Lamar was still ranked. He was 4th on the list. So you can't really push back that much. But the fact, I think some people, they did a double take at the fact that some people thought he was number 6. I think that was the lowest he went. And some people were wondering, why is that? I mean, Lamar Jackson's a repeat MVP. Sometimes he carries the Ravens. And yeah, we just unpacked. It really is just pretty simple, and it comes down to playoffs. I mean, it comes down to meaningful football games, the postseason. And when you look at the top 10 quarterbacks, at least according to that poll, and we broke it down in the story, just looking at how, what is these quarterbacks' playoff record. And not only record, because we know it is a team sport. It's not just the quarterback, but how are those quarterbacks performing in those playoff games? And Lamar Jackson, look, I mean, I like Lamar Jackson. I think he's a transcendent talent. I think he is one of the 3-4 best quarterbacks in the NFL. But the numbers also suggest that he turns the ball over at a reasonably higher rate than all those other quarterbacks in the playoffs, at least up until this point. Patrick Mahomes is the only other quarterback with more career playoff turnovers, and he's been in a lot more playoff games than Lamar Jackson. And so I think it's really just he's got to answer that. He's got to, even with Josh Allen, that's a guy who hasn't gotten over the Patrick Mahomes hurdle in the playoffs, but his performances individually, collectively in the postseason have just been a step above Lamar Jackson. He's also been to an additional conference championship game. And so, yeah, I think Lamar Jackson, the one thing he has to answer yet in terms of skeptics of his game is, look, come through when it matters most. And that's what we're looking for there.
Yeah, I mean, I love what you did because I've been doing it just sort of back of the envelope, talking about the difference between Josh Allen and Joe Burrow in particular, because I don't think anybody has an issue with Mahomes being ahead of Jackson. Okay. And by the way, you mentioned, and you put this together, 17-4 as a playoff quarterback in 7 conference title games in a row. A 105.4 QB rating, 53 total touchdowns and 13 turnovers. Lamar's 3-5 in 8 playoff games, made it to 1 conference title game. They lost to Mahomes at home 2 years ago. An 84.6 QBR, 13 touchdowns, 11 turnovers. And those 11 turnovers have been crucial in some of those losses. And, Cody, Lamar admitted last year that he gets tight in these playoff games, and he understands the significance of getting through. But to your work that you did here, really putting the actual numbers to a gut feel and sort of back of the envelope, just looking at Pro Football Reference real quickly, Josh Allen and Joe Burrow have just been much more outstanding. They've been outstanding quarterbacks in their playoff games, including their playoff losses to Kansas City, where Lamar hasn't. That's why he's lower than them. Yeah,
and that doesn't mean that, it's time to dump Lamar Jackson.
Right.
Like, I mean, it doesn't mean it's, we've seen this. Like, we have to have patience sometimes. You have a transcendent talent like that. You hope that eventually it's a matter of when, not if, that kind of gets broken through. But I think, yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, the numbers bear it out. It's just a different story in the playoffs. I think a prime, the other thing that jumped out to me in that comparison it was an accidental revelation, was the Jalen Hurts conversation, because we look at
Right.
Lamar Jackson. I think that, you can fall on different sides of this, but I think no one would disagree that, like, if you're ranking elite quarterbacks in the NFL, I mean, their hand is shooting up for Lamar Jackson, because he puts prolific numbers out. He looks cool while he's doing it. But they would always take him ahead of Jalen Hurts. But when you look at the numbers in terms of games that matter, and performance in games that matter, I mean, you talk about 11 total turnovers for Lamar Jackson in 8 playoff games. Jalen Hurts has 4 total turnovers in the playoffs for his career. That includes 2 Super Bowl appearances in which he gave 2 championship level performances.
Yeah.
And so I get it. Would you rather, if you're starting a team, would you rather take the physical gifts of Lamar Jackson? Probably. Would you bet that over the course of time that's going to bear out better for you? Probably. But at some point you also have to look at the results. And I was stunned, actually, that, wow, the ESPN poll there had Jalen Hurts 9th. And when you look at the numbers that he's giving you in games that matter most, it's almost unbelievable that he's at that spot.
Yeah, you and I are on the same page. Look, I would not take Jalen Hurts in front of Lamar Jackson, but I point out all the time when it comes to Jalen Hurts, he has risen to the level of the game every single opportunity he has. And you quantified it in this story. Jalen Hurts in 9 playoff games as a starter is 6-3 with a 95.4 QBR, 20 total touchdowns and 4 turnovers. Lamar, 13 touchdowns, 11 turnovers with a 3-5 record. Jalen has really stepped up, but that's one of those where the eye test would say Lamar is a breathless, electrifying, incredible regular season quarterback, and I'll still take him. What did you make of those? Because the controversies were Lamar at 4, behind Burrow and even Allen in some cases. Hurts at 9. You mentioned that. What about Jaden being at 5? Did you have an issue with that?
Not really, but that's just, again, it's such a small sample size, but I think we talked before when we put out either quarterback rankings or quarterback tiers. I think Jaden Daniels is already, and we did this with CJ Stroud too, and we saw that he kind of took a step back once the situation around him got a little less stable. But I'm just of the belief that, with Jaden Daniels, you got not only the numbers, not only the eye test, was passed with flying colors, but he also showed it wasn't just regular season. I mean, we saw, he had the Commanders on the doorstep of a Super Bowl with a roster that, frankly, probably didn't deserve to be there. And so I think that his impact in terms of elevating everything around him, and then just as a rookie, year one, looking unbothered when the lights are brightest, I think that just spoke a lot to me. So I really don't have that much of an issue. Now, these rankings are supposed to reflect, that they should adjust depending on what happens. And so if this year we see, look, Jaden Daniels can't protect himself, he can't protect the ball as well, well, then the rankings should reflect a drop in that. But right now, with what we have, I mean, I would, if you were redrafting all 32 quarterbacks right now, I don't see how Jaden Daniels isn't going in the top 5. If not, 6 is probably the latest I would see him going.
I don't know if you felt this way. The first thing that struck me about the list when I saw it yesterday, and seeing Baker Mayfield at 10 as an example, and seeing Stroud and Love as the only 2 honorable mentions, the depth, or at least at least what we believe to be the depth, because there are a lot of young quarterbacks, right? 6 quarterbacks were taken in the top 12 in 2024, and they're all going to start this year. So we could have a much deeper quarterback group, when we have this conversation in a year or two. But I think in terms of quarterback depth league-wide, it's the lowest it's been in a long time. Do you agree or disagree?
Yeah, I think it's always tricky just because you're always dealing with, I mean, that's why we've done quarterback tiers too, where, look, it's fun to do the rankings 1 through 32, but sometimes it's more helpful to break them up into tiers. I think that there's a select group, I'd say 5 or 6, where no question about it, every team would love to have this guy under center. And, that's your Mahomes, your Burrow, your Allen, your Jackson. And that's where, you would have some debate about a guy like Jalen Hurts. But then there's your borderline stars, your guys who, if you give them the supporting cast, they can take you far. You're not sure about a championship, but they can take you far. I'm thinking of, a Jared Goff, a Brock Purdy, guys who've been on these big stages, but in part thanks to the stuff around them.
Right.
Then you've got this massive, huge contingent of quarterbacks where I think they're all basically interchangeable. They may play different styles. Their offenses may cater to different things. One of them, like Dak Prescott, may prefer to be more of a pure pocket passer. With Bo Nix, maybe you're rolling out a little bit more. I think that there's such a big gray area. So in terms of depth, I think everyone except for maybe the Saints, the Colts, everyone's got a reasonable quarterback. The problem is you've only got 6 or 7 that are like true difference makers. And that's been the case for a while.
That's true. I mean, in terms of like that true elite level, even though I think right now, and I think this story on ESPN it expressed this and described it as such, that there was a big, sort of drop off after the top 4, which means Jaden probably got the most top, number 5 votes, but didn't get many 1, 2, 3, or 4 votes, if any. But yeah, I think we've seen for a while, it's like the list is usually 4, 5, 6, 7 that you would consider to be truly elite. And then there's that group 8 to 15 where they're kind of interchangeable. We're talking to Cody Benjamin. Cody writes for CBSSports.com. You can follow him on X at Cody J. Benjamin. He writes a lot, which is great. There's always a good story that he puts out. And he had the other day the list of coaches 1 through 32. He put them into 3 tiers. And let me just mention that, coaches 21 through 32 were a tier 3 unproven and underwhelming. We don't have to talk a lot about those guys. Those guys include new guys like Brian Schottenheimer and Ben Johnson, and existing guys like Dable, and Raheem Morris. So let's get to essentially what turned out to be your top 20 coaches. We'll move towards Dan Quinn here in a moment, but what went in overall to kind of your thought process on the guys that aren't, unproven or underwhelming?
Yeah, similar to quarterbacks, it's a tricky science here in terms of decoupling the coach from what they're given. You can't do that fully. It's impossible. The quarterback, again, you've got some that are going to transcend their surroundings, and similar to coaches, there are some coaches that have just proven, the track record is just so deep that you would just trust that, put them in any organization, and they would probably have that organization looking okay. With the other guys, it's tougher because they're hinging a lot on, well, what do you have at quarterback? What were the expectations when you were hired? And so the top, it's kind of balancing, similar to quarterbacks again, because it's coaches and quarterbacks that really drive the conversation. You're balancing what have you proven, but also what is the upside here? Because in that bottom tier, there were some cases where, and this is maybe nitpicking a little depending on how you're looking at it, but there were some cases where guys who've already been coaches were ranked lower than guys who've never been coaches, solely because I'd prefer to just hire for the upside, because kind of what I've seen from those other guys isn't necessarily moving the needle enough to say, I'd rather just take the unknown. And so it's a combination of what have you shown with what you've had, and what have you shown to indicate you're worth betting on moving forward.
All right. So let's go with, we'll mention a few of these. We won't give the whole list, but number one's really easy, right? Like there's no one who follows the NFL or writes about the NFL is going to argue with Andy Reid as the number one coach in the NFL. Like how much distance is there between Reid and Sean McVay at 2?
Yeah, I mean, I would say it's pretty. There's one that just feels right in the whole list, and it is that one. And for a while, would have been a guy like Belichick, but even Belichick slid toward the end. The one thing that was in my mind putting Andy Reid at one was the Super Bowl and how kind of embarrassed the Chiefs were. But then again, it's like you remind yourself, my goodness, 5 of the last 6 Super Bowls. I mean, to even get there. And looking at their talent, sometimes the Chiefs are not the most talented team on the field. They aren't. And sometimes, or oftentimes, they're winning on the margins. And that speaks so much sometimes to they're equipped situationally. And that often falls back on the coach. And so, yeah, it was a pretty easy one there. And to be honest, there's a lot of good coaches up there. But I would say between, after Reid and McVay, there felt like you could have swapped 5 or 6 of those guys in that top 10 spot.
I agree with that. The interesting thing about Andy Reid is prior to Patrick Mahomes, there was a real, debate as to what Andy Reid was as a head coach. First of all, he was not great at clock management, some of the strategic moments in big games. They the year before Mahomes with Alex Smith at quarterback, they blew a huge lead and lost a wild card game at home, to Marcus Mariota in Tennessee, in ugly fashion. But at the same time, I always felt like his teams overall over a 16-game schedule overachieved more often than underachieved. But he was far from being thought of as a lock for the Hall of Fame.
Oh, yeah. I mean, when we look back at this now, and sometimes it's a silly argument, but you'll still hear occasionally, "Oh, the Eagles should have never let him go back in 2012." No, at that time, it was the right time for Andy Reid and the Eagles to split. I mean, there was a reason that happened. Things had grown stale in Philadelphia, and Andy Reid was a good coach then. He was a good offensive mind. But he has come a long way. I think that the best reason you put Andy Reid at number 1 is that he's adapted to his personnel. He's adapted to what he has at his disposal. He maximizes whatever he's given. So when Mahomes first came on the scene, this was a big play machine in Kansas City. You had Tyreek Hill, who could fly down the field. That was, Mahomes is throwing 50 touchdowns because the Chiefs are just a video game offense. Lately, you don't have the speed, the reliability of someone like Tyreek Hill. You've got banged up wide receivers, an older Travis Kelce. So they become much more of a methodical, late era Patriots kind of a team where we're just going to kind of, beat you around for 4 quarters and then win on the margins. And so the ability to win with every kind of roster and yeah, you can't unlink him from Mahomes. But you know what? That's, you can't unlink fully Belichick and Brady either. So I think it's just worked.
Before we'll work our way to Dan Quinn, everybody, I promise, and where Cody has Dan Quinn ranked among the 32 coaches in the NFL. But I'm curious as to what the biggest pushback to this list has been.
I'll tell you what, I mean, with these kind of lists, you always make somebody upset. There's been surprisingly little animosity coming back from this list. I would say the most consistent pushback has probably been Kyle Shanahan dropping too far. Now I think, he's down at 7 in this one. And I think after Reid and McVay, I think you could make the case that 5 or 6 guys in the top 10 could be shuffled around. I mean, I had a hard time placing Nick Sirianni.
Right.
That's a guy who he was in the middle of the list last year because I didn't know what to do with him. Nobody knew what to do with him, including the Eagles, who contemplated, maybe do we make a change here? But again, it's similar to the Jalen Hurts thing. It's like, well, would you rather have Dan Campbell than Nick Sirianni? Would you rather have Jim Harbaugh? I think a lot of people would say yes. But then when you come down and look at what they've done, when it matters, coaching in 2 of the 3 last Super Bowls, turning that team that was horrific at the end of 23 and somehow behind the scenes gelling that group, that was a hard one to place. But I think that the most pushback is probably from 49ers fans who feel that, look, injuries have wrecked Kyle Shanahan's teams, and that is true. But it's it's very boom or bust with Shanahan's 49ers. Right.
Yeah, I thought you would say Sirianni. You've got Sirianni at 4 behind Reed, McVay, John Harbaugh, and then Sirianni. It's just so interesting. Look, they love him there. There's something that he's clearly successful as a motivator. But God, there have been some buffoonish moments with him, including early in the season last year, where you were wondering, will he even survive their bye week? I mean, that's what's crazy about the league, right? I mean, he almost didn't make it back for 2024. And early in the season, when he's jawing with Browns fans after they barely beat Cleveland, with Eagles fans who were complaining, it's just, I thought that would be the area in which you got the most pushback. Sirianni.
Yeah, I think that Eagles fans, and they're a volatile bunch. And so, when it's working, they're fully behind you. When it's not, they want you out of town. I think that is kind of what's happening with Sirianni here, where they were rightfully, questioning his place on the sidelines. But now that kind of, the stink of 2023 is totally washed away, I think that Eagles fans have actually been like, oh, finally he's getting some recognition here. So it's kind of almost a bandwagon amongst Eagles fans even. But yeah, I agree. Right. I mean, I think a year ago at this time, even like you said, September, October 24, I mean, after that Browns game, I remember I was covering a Vikings game, but I remember driving home listening to that press conference that he gave after the Browns game. He had shaven his head, brought his kids to the press conference after screaming at the fans. I said to myself aloud, this is going to be the moment we look back and say, this is where it just totally blew up. This is where it went, totally downhill. This was when we knew it would be over for Sirianni. And I was wrong, totally wrong. I mean, somehow behind the scenes, those guys championed him. And he found a way, you thought at one point he and Jalen Hurts didn't see eye to eye, didn't like each other.
Right.
They're holding the trophy at the end of the year. And so, it's confounding. I didn't know where to put him. The results kind of made me put him there.
All right. We are talking to Cody Benjamin from CBSSports.com. He put out yesterday a ranking of the coaches in the NFL. Before we get to Quinn, here's the one that I was most impressed with. And then I had 2 gripes. I was impressed that you had Kevin Stefanski at 13. I think he's a very underrated coach who will coach arguably the worst team in the NFL this year with the craziest of quarterback situations. But I actually think he's an outstanding coach. And I can't imagine that you could have gone any higher than 13. But when you consider he's the coach of probably the worst team in the league and having him at 13, I'm aligned with you. What do you like about Stefanski?
Yeah, I think it's just making the most of a bad situation. And I know he's not completely blameless for, the quarterback decisions that, he had to be at least somewhat on board with the Deshaun Watson gamble. But at some point, the cards that you're dealt there, I did feel a little bad, putting him that high, because I could see where he's not coaching a good team. But the fact that you drag a team with Joe Flacco and Kareem Hunt as your top, playmakers one year to the playoff, I just imagined, if Kevin Stefanski were let go by the Browns, or they had an abrupt mutual parting of ways, I think there'd be a lineup of teams that would be very interested in speaking with him and hiring him. And so, that was kind of the draw there. I think I was even surprised at the record he has, because Cleveland has been so bad and perpetually rebuilding. It was astounding that the record was even that reasonable.
Right. Well, they had that run with Flacco at the end of the season 2 years ago. I think the number one gripe for me, I kind of am with 49er fans. I think Kyle's probably a little bit higher. But you had Todd Bowles at 19th. I think he is always incredibly overlooked and criminally underrated as one of the great defensive minds in football, and a guy who's done a hell of a job the last few years after Brady left.
I think that if I could be honest, I think maybe there is some lingering, when they made the switch from Bruce Arians to Todd Bowles, I think that maybe there was, everyone kind of anticipated a potential drop off and kind of the wizardry of the first, years with Tom Brady there. It kind of felt like when Todd Bowles took over, fair or not, he kind of, that's a high bar to clear there.
Right.
When Brady arrived, winning the Super Bowl right away with Bruce Arians there in Tampa Bay, I think it probably unfairly set the standard. And I do think we overlook nationally. We talk about the NFC South like it's wide open all the time, but the Bucs have, they are repeat, champions there
Yeah.
in the NFC South. And so I will say, yeah, defensively, things fell off a bit last year. I think another thing that he deserves credit for, though, is the offensive staffing because at least lately, finding the guys, you had Dave Canales, then you got Liam Cohen.
Yeah.
And so I think you trust probably who he's hired here to keep Baker Mayfield going.
All right. I got, we saved the best for last. So tell everybody where you have Quinn on this list and why.
Yeah. So Dan Quinn is 14th. And so I think, he's certainly not Nick Sirianni in terms of, there's a lot of reasons he's not Nick Sirianni, but I compare him just a little bit because of the positioning. So last year, really didn't know where to put Nick Sirianni. He was at 15, and kind of that middle ground is where you've got guys who, well, they've shown enough that they're not at the bottom, but there's still something that's maybe holding you back from saying, I would no doubt hire him. I believe he's an elite coach. I think that with Dan Quinn, you're just trying to figure out how much of 2024's magic was solely Jaden Daniels. And he was responsible for, Cliff Kingsbury making that work. He's part of the group that brought in Jaden Daniels. I think he also deserves some credit for giving Jaden Daniels enough, veteran support in the roster. The question is really just like, you look at the track record. I know that his Atlanta tenure is, that's a different time, but 4 of the 6 seasons he was the Falcons coach, he did not have a winning record with the Falcons. And so I think you're just trying to figure out, is this for real? Can he now take that franchise to the next level, which would mean a Super Bowl really? And he's been on that stage before. I think the question is it's just trying to figure out who is responsible for this Commanders turnaround. Is it Adam Peters? Is it Jaden Daniels? I think Dan Quinn's part of it. We just need a little more time to say he is an elite ingredient in that recipe.
Number 14 on Cody Benjamin's top coaches ranked 1 through 32 list put out on CBSSports.com. We could probably do 10 minutes on Mike Tomlin's ranking as well, but we don't have time. As always, I really enjoyed it and appreciate it. Hope you're well. Let's do it again soon.
Absolutely. Thanks again for having me back on.
At Cody J. Benjamin on X on Twitter. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980 and the team980.com. Interesting list that he put together. Also, some really good stuff on, why Lamar was where he was. That was somebody, doing the work that we've kind of referenced and talked about occasionally, with respect to, the playoff numbers, and he put it together in his story on why NFL execs, coaches, scouts rank at times Lamar Jackson even outside of the top 5, because apparently he had some outside the top 5 votes. And when you look at, the Mahomes, Allen, Burrow, Jackson comparisons in particular, you just see completely different, completely opposite performances in the postseason. I mean, Allen is 7-6 in 13 playoff games, but his QB rating is 101.7 with 33 total touchdowns and 6 total turnovers. We remember some of these incredible moments. I mean, total clutch, massive high-level play to only be outdone by Patrick Mahomes at the end, or a Harrison Butker long kick. Joe Burrow, he's only played in 7 total playoff games, but he's been to 2 conference championship games, and his QBR in those games is 93.8 with 10 touchdowns total and 4 turnovers. Lamar, 8 total playoff games, 3 and 5, and the lowest QBR of those 4 by far, with 13 touchdowns and 11 total turnovers. And you can go back, and yeah, there were others that made mistakes. I mean, the 2-point conversion catch could have been held on to in Buffalo last year. The receiver that fumbled, at the 2-yard line against the Chiefs in the title game, going in, that obviously hurt. But Lamar hasn't played well in the franchise's biggest games, and Josh Allen and Joe Burrow have, period. And his point about Jalen Hurts, we know this from just being NFL fans. Hurts may be, decent during the regular season, but every big game that Philadelphia seems to have, he rises to a borderline elite dual threat level. And I put dual threat in there because that's the importance of the description, because he's not an elite level drop back passer. But when you combine the dual threat nature to his game with his passing ability, it is an elite level performance that he usually gives in the Eagles' most important games. By the way, Matt Stafford's postseason career record. Remember, they went to the playoffs a couple of times in Detroit, and they've gone a couple of times in LA. He's 5-2 as an NFL playoff starter with a 109.2 QBR, the highest of the top 10 quarterbacks on that ESPN list. 17 total touchdowns, 4 total turnovers. He's been a clutch performer as well. Yeah, I know what Burrow has at wide receiver. I'm very familiar with what he has at wide receiver. I get it. And Lamar hasn't had that. Lamar's had some better defenses. Look, the team 2 years ago that Kansas City scored 17 points again, that was one of the best defensive teams until we saw the Eagles at the end of last year that we had seen in a while. That was the team that needed to go win a Super Bowl. The 2023 Baltimore Ravens. I thought they were going to win the Super Bowl heading into that postseason. But again, he's still got, he's got half of his career to go, if not a little bit more, maybe. Who knows? He'll have plenty of opportunities to deliver when it matters. All right. When we come back, Cornelius Lucas said something about Jaden Daniels that I want you to hear. Linnell's going to join us at 12, and then we will get to this Art Monk news and the Washington linebacker that made the top 10 ESPN list. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980, the team980.com. We are also free and live on the Odyssey app, and I do want you to know that Window Nation has one of their best deals of the year going on right now, 50% off on all Windows styles and 0% interest for 5 years. You won't pay any interest on your purchase if you choose to finance the purchase until the year 2030. I trust Window Nation. You can as well. They've got an A-plus rating from the Better Business Bureau, 96% customer satisfaction rating, over 45,000 five-star reviews. They've got all the experience you would want your window installers to have. They've installed over 2 million windows across the country, and their average installer crew leader averages 16 years of experience. Window Nation can come out and give you an estimate in an hour or less. You'll find out which windows actually need to be replaced. Just give them a chance. 866-90-NATION, windownation.com. Schedule your free, no obligation, no pressure estimate now. And if you decide to move forward with them, 50% off and 0% interest for 5 years. 866-90-NATION or windownation.com.
All right, the Washington Commanders have made an announcement that the team will be retiring Art Monk's number 81 in Week 9 against the Seattle Seahawks. The team will be wearing their Super Bowl era throwbacks that released last week. The Redskins legend still holds the team's career reception record, and he also holds the team record for career receiving yards. We've also got a wide receiver extension in the NFL, and no, it is not Terry McLaurin. Former Ohio State Buckeye Garrett Wilson has agreed to a 4-year extension with the New York Jets worth $130 million. And includes $90 million in guarantees. Shamar Stewart is currently weighing his options and could look to make a return to college. The Bengals' first-round pick is currently in a contract dispute with the team over language regarding financial guarantees. Stewart has been working out with his old college team, the Texas A&M Aggies, and currently believes that there is a path back to the college level. Last night, Cal Raleigh wins the home run derby after facing off against Junior Caminero in the finals. Raleigh becomes the first catcher to win the event and the first Mariner to win since Ken Griffey did it back-to-back in 98 and 99. The Tampa Bay Rays are being sold for $1.7 billion in a deal agreed to in principle by owner Stu Sternberg. The deal is expected to close in September and will keep the Rays in Tampa for the years ahead. This update is sponsored by the Team 980 YouTube page. Just open the app, type in the Team 980, hit subscribe. Kevin Sheehan is live from 10 to 1 and Craig Hoffman from 4 to 7. Don't forget to like the streams and turn on notifications to stay up to date on all things DC sports. And that is what's trending.
So after 5 seasons in Washington, if you can believe it, Cornelius Lucas ended up signing a 2-year, $10 million contract with the Browns in this offseason. So he will not be on the roster this year. He's in Cleveland. He was on with Kay Adams on the NFL Network the other day and was asked about his one season playing with Jaden Daniels.
Oh, man.
Truly, this like transcendent. I mean, you just said it. Oh man, why are you saying oh man?
Because in 12 years, I've never seen a rookie player come in and never have a bad day. You know, like it was kind of like, oh, well, he had a good day today. Maybe tomorrow he'll show us that he's a rookie. And he just kept piling on good days after good days after good days, and to the point where I wasn't surprised when we got to the season and he had the type of performances that he was having, because he showed us every day who he was.
That's a great observation. I can't believe he doesn't have.
Yeah.
I remember being at camp last year and like Dan would not let me talk to him.
Yeah.
Dan was like, he's not the starter. And I was like, get out of, like, what are you talking about? But it's just like, but then I remember being on the sideline with my producer and being like, the ball has not hit the ground. Like, who is this man? I mean, you played with Stafford, you've played with Goff, you've played with Drew Brees, and Jaden is sticking out to you.
Yes, 100%. Probably top 2 quarterback I play with.
Who's one?
Top 2. I don't want to get into that, but he's top 2.
I would imagine the other one is Stafford. He played with Stafford in Detroit.
He immediately went on to say Matthew Stafford. Kay Adams works her magic yet again.
Oh, he did?
Yeah, he did. I cut it there because he starts talking about Matt Stafford, and they get to the Matt Stafford portion of the interview. But Matt Stafford was
he was with Goff in L.A. with the Rams in 2017. And then obviously quarterback, hell here for the first 4 years until last year. Yeah, high compliment for a player after 1 year. I love the way, because you'll hear that a lot from players and coaches about rookies, had a great day today. Yeah, but the other day wasn't great. Typical of a young guy, up and down here early, trying to find it, trying to figure it out. And that's what he was saying. It was like he never had a bad day. He started right from the beginning having, good days, and, behaving or producing is the better way, the better verb, producing like he was a veteran player. And that's what he did from the very beginning. And then we saw it clearly in the regular season. Maybe not the opener. Maybe, that opener was the only game. And, it wasn't all him, but he was definitely more interested in that game and trying to make plays with his legs than with his arms, with his arm. Okay. Linnell's going to jump on with us next. I reached out to Linnell because I was in the car last night. Linnell was doing, I don't know how many hours he did on Wizards Summer League basketball, but he was on a roll. And I want to talk about the Wizards' very young nucleus and who we think the best chance for an all-star is. We'll do that next. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980 and the team980.com. Do we have Linnell? No,
No,
right?
we're trying like hell, but
Okay.
we do not have Linnell
All right.
yet.
If we can't get him, we can't get him. He's a very busy man. The young fella he's always got something going on.
It's true.
So I did want to get to this latest. We mentioned yesterday when we talked a lot about the quarterbacks list that ESPN put out. They do every position group, 11 position groups: running backs, D tackles, edge rushers, safeties, tight ends, interior offensive linemen, offensive tackles, quarterbacks. Today they did off-ball linebackers. Tomorrow it's wide receivers. Will Terry be in the top 10? I'm going to guess that he will be after last year. I'm going to guess he's going to come in at like 10 or 9 is my guess. And then corners on Thursday. Okay, so that's the rundown of this ESPN surveying of 70 plus NFL coaches, NFL front office execs, and NFL scouts. So they write about this off-ball linebacker list. The most uneven positional group of the top 10 series, linebacker is top-heavy and void of consensus. 3 players appear on at least 70% of the ballots. Usually that number is much higher, yet 32 players earned at least 1 vote. The top 2 is identical to last year, but the rest of the field is jumbled with 4 first-time honorees and an aging player returning to the list after a few years out of the mix. So here it goes. Off-ball linebackers. So the non-edge pass rushers / linebackers. There's a top 10, and then there are several honorable mentions. As they mentioned, a lot of players got a lot of votes. So we would be looking at Bobby Wagner and Frankie Louvu, 2 second-team All-Pros last year. Fred Warner, number 1 on the list. That's where he was last year. Fred Warner's spectacular. And if he's, completely healthy along with the rest of the 49ers, they are going to be good this year. Key for them is to have everybody on the field for the majority of games. Number 2 is Roquan Smith in Baltimore. Number 3, I actually, before I saw this list early this morning, I thought this guy was going to be number 1. I thought Zach Bond, the season he had in Philadelphia after signing his free agent deal in Philadelphia, I thought he had an outrageous season last year and would be number 1 on the list. But one of the things that I didn't realize is that he wasn't anywhere near the list last year or ever, because he's never been ranked on this list before. Remember, he did not have productive sack years in New Orleans. But they write Bond is emblematic of what's great about the NFL. A role player making $3.5 million one year can earn a $51 million deal the next, thanks to an unexpected star turn. Opportunity met untapped talent when Bond joined Philadelphia as an unrestricted free agent in 2024. Vic Fangio's scheme was ideal for Bond. Remember, he moved him to middle linebacker. Once a rotational linebacker in New Orleans, who earned all-pro honors thanks to 151 total tackles, 3.5 sacks, 5 forced fumbles, and 11 tackles for loss. He also appeared on nearly 90% of the ballots. One NFC exec, said, Bond didn't get a lot of defensive snaps in New Orleans, so he seized the opportunity when given a full run in Philly. His 41% run-stop win rate was first among the linebackers in top 10. Another NFC exec said, finally came into his own. He's such a versatile defender that can affect the game in multiple ways, that his strength was potentially hindering him from reaching his ceiling on his early on in his career. Instead, he really mastered stacked inside linebacker play and was able to build up that foundation to take advantage of his athletic ability and playmaking. Zach Bond was so good last year. Number 4 on the off-ball linebacker list, Nick Bolton, Kansas City. And then number 5. God, I was thrilled to see this, but I did not expect it. But I love the fact that NFL people realize how good this guy is and how much better he is going to get, I think. Frankie Louvu came in at number 5 on the list. Last year, I said many times, he may be the second best pound-for-pound player on the team after Jaden, third worst case after Jaden and Terry. Here's what they wrote about Frankie Louvu, who's never been ranked on this list before. Louvu's first year as a Commander vaulted him into the top 10 conversation. He received a few votes last year, but was largely a non-factor in the voting. But this year, he appeared in the top 5 on many ballots. While some evaluators believe number 5 is rich for Louvu, he earned the votes, and this is a composite ranking. One NFL defensive coach said, quote, "I have so much respect for him. He's been one of the best tone setters in the NFL. His production over the last 3 years is as good as anyone," closed quote. Head coach Dan Quinn deploys Louvu somewhat similarly to Micah Parsons in Dallas, a hybrid linebacker with pass rush ability off the edge. Louvu capitalized in a big way with 8 sacks, 12 tackles for loss. And remember, this guy's from last year, 7 pass deflections on his way to second-team All-Pro honors. One NFL coordinator said, versatile playmaking in the run game, the pass game, and with pass rush. His play style is all over the tape. One knock on Louvu, they write, he's a bit of a scheme fit, can't play in every scheme, can't ask him to play in man coverage consistently. That according to one NFC executive. So Frankie Louvu in the ESPN surveying of coaches, execs, and scouts, ranking of the top 10 off-ball linebackers, Frankie Louvu's number 5. Number 6, Tremaine Edmonds in Chicago. Number 7, God, Levante David just keeps getting that respect. 35 years old. He comes in at 7. Here's a guy that you're going to have to keep an eye on because he's gotten hurt and he was a rookie, a second-year guy last year. DeMarvion Overshown. Remember him last year? If you were watching Dallas during the course of the season last year, he wore jersey number 0 for the Cowboys. He ended up getting hurt and missed a few games, but God, he was good last year in his season, rookie season for the Cowboys. He missed the 2023 season with injury. So Overshown comes in on this list at number 7 on the list. Is that where he is? Hold on, let me go back to the list. He comes in at number 8 after Levante David. That is a high ranking for Overshown in Dallas, but man, he was exciting to watch. Dre Greenlaw in Denver was 9th. Quincy Williams, the Jets, at number 10. God, Quincy Williams was much higher on that list. Yeah, he was a few years ago ranked number 2 on this list. All right, honorable mention was Wagner and honorable mention. They list these in order, by the way, of votes. Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah is the first honorable mention. A lot of people would have preferred that he got drafted a few years back. And then Bobby Wagner. So Bobby Wagner essentially is 12th on this list. They write the physical skills have declined, but he can compensate with all-world instincts, one AFC exec said. Still great at getting a jump on a play, doing everything you want out of a linebacker. Smart, instinctive, knows what everybody is doing. Pass coverage is where you see a little bit of a dip, which is expected at this stage, said another NFL personnel evaluator. So Washington with 2 of the top 12 off-ball linebackers in the league. Patrick Queen, Demario Davis, Matt Milano, Logan Wilson, Jack Campbell, Alaquan in Jacksonville, Sherwood with the Jets, Franklin in Indianapolis, and Blake Cashman in Minnesota were all honorable mentions as well. So there you go. Washington's got Tunsil at number 7 on the tackle list. They've got Jaden at number 5 on the quarterback list, and they've got Louvu on the list of that number 5 of off-ball linebackers, with Wagner as an honorable mention, and in the rankings would have been 12th had they extended it. Sam Cosmi got others receiving votes for interior offensive linemen, and Brian Robinson Jr. got others receiving votes for running backs. Tomorrow, we will get receivers, and that's a list, man, to put together. That is a tough list to put together. I think Chase and Jefferson will be 1-2. And then, the usual suspects, probably A.J. Brown, C.D. Lamb, are in that conversation for 3. God, I'm still not with Lamb that high. But he's great. There's no doubt about it. But, yeah, it'll be interesting to see where we get Terry on that list. I think he was not on the list last year, but was honorable mention. I got to go back and look at previous lists. Was Terry on that list last year?
The top wide receivers list?
Last year's list. Here it is. I'm going to pull it up right now. Wide receivers last year: Jefferson 1, Hill 2, Chase 3, Lamb 4, Adams 5, Brown 6, Amon-Ra St. Brown 7, Evans 8, Diggs 9, Brandon Ayuk 10. And then Terry wasn't even honorable mention last year. Kupp, Debo, Garrett Wilson, Waddle, Devontae Smith, Nico Collins, Amari Cooper, DJ Moore were all honorable mention. Then Terry was third on the list of others receiving votes, which essentially made him last year 16th, 18th, 19th, 20th, the 22nd ranked receiver in the NFL. It's going to be much higher than that this year, no doubt. Didn't help that Sam Howell was throwing him passes in 2023 with Eric Bieniemy as the coordinator. That certainly didn't help. 2023, not Terry's best, not the team's best either. And, you got to have some level of team success. I don't know, man. I mean, I think Terry's going to be close to 10, maybe as high as 9. He was a second team All-Pro, right? And so he was among the 6 receivers that were All-Pros. I don't know if he'll be ranked in the top 6. I would say that he will be in the top 10, though. What's your guess?
This year, I don't know. It's given the year he had last year, he should probably be somewhere kind of lower on the. I think he's probably going to be somewhere between 8 to 10 is where I would probably list him if I was going to put him on the top 10 at all.
That's where I'd have him. I think he's going to be the highest would be 8th. The worst would be like 11th. Like first mention of the honorable mentions.
Yeah.
But I think he's going to be in the top 10. I think he's going to be. I think what you said is exactly where he's going to land, between 8 and 10. The All-Pro receivers last year, first team: Chase, Jefferson, Amon-Ra St. Brown. And then the second team wide receivers: Terry, CeeDee Lamb, and A.J. Brown. He's going to be in the top 10. Has to be after last season. All right. No Linnell. That's fine. I do want to get to I missed him. I wanted to talk some Wizard Summer League with him. Very interesting story out of the NFL related to one of the first round picks from this past draft. Remember Shamar Stewart, Texas A&M, the guy that had no sack production at A&M? There is a chance that he may decide to try to blow up the entire first round of the NFL draft and set a precedent that I don't think the league wants to see. I'll explain what I'm talking about when we come back. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980 and the team980.com. So Shamar Stewart was picked number 17 overall by the Cincinnati Bengals. The edge pass rusher out of Texas A&M, 6'5", 270. The numbers, the combine numbers, the pro day numbers were off the charts. Just an absolute freak of an athlete. He vertical jumped, I think, 42 inches. He had a ridiculous 10-yard split, incredible 40-yard. I think he ran a 4.5, 4.6 40 at 6'5" and 270 pounds. But he had a total of 4.5 sacks in 3 seasons. Now, his pass rush rate was very good. He was explosive. He made plays. He had long arms. And people were falling all over themselves. I was a bit skeptical because you can say all you want about pass rush, pressure and rates and, TFLs. But when you have that few sacks over 3 years, I think it was 1.5, 1.5, and 1.5 over 3 years, there's something, especially at the college level, you got to get home. And I know they're playing SEC teams. So I was a little bit skeptical. And watching him, I remember before the draft, there was a little bit of straight line, feel as an athlete, not as much, sort of athletic vision. But whatever. He was picked 17th overall by the Bengals, who still don't have Trey Hendrickson signed as they are heading towards the beginning of training camp. So there's a story out of CBS Sports reporter Bud Elliott, who has shared that Shamar Stewart is contemplating going back to college and, working out with his former team, Texas A&M, and then the idea of trying to go back to school and potentially even play and then enter the draft again next year. Elliott said, quote, "It may not be legal yet, but then again, everything in the NCAA is subject to litigation. I didn't know you could do this. I knew you could do this in baseball. I don't know why you could do it in baseball, but not football. You'll probably have to go to court." And yes, there is the idea that if Stewart sued and threatened the NCAA, a rule that prevents a player who's been drafted but who hasn't signed an NFL contract from returning to college football, they could be, susceptible to antitrust laws and an attack on that if he decided to go that route. Now, in the collective bargaining agreement between the players and NFL owners, the CBA actually discusses the possibility that a drafted player goes back to college rather than playing with their team. He is not signed with Cincinnati. He didn't participate in any of the offseason stuff because the pay scale apparently doesn't apply to him and his agent. He wants a different structure to his contract. But remember, the CBA a while back that instituted the rookie wage scale, basically slots players. That's why you don't see anywhere near over the many years since that was, I think the rookie wage scale went in 2011. Prior to 2011, you would see a lot of rookie holdouts. You just don't see that very much anymore. But the CBA contemplated this possibility, and here is the language, quote, "If any college football player who becomes eligible for the draft prior to exhausting his college football eligibility through participation," you know what, I'm not even going to read it. Let me net it out because it's a lot of legalese. The bottom line is, per the CBA, if Shamar Stewart returns to Texas A&M to college football in 2025, he would still be the property, or the rights would be held by the Cincinnati Bengals in the 2026 draft. That means he would not be permitted to re-enter the draft next year. So we'll see what happens if he can sue his way back to playing at Texas A&M rather than just going to school and working out. But what's the point of it if he's going to remain, if the Bengals are going to maintain his rights next year? That seems, crazy. All right. Earlier, and when I say earlier, about an hour ago, the Washington Commanders now announced that Art Monk's jersey will be the jersey that will be retired in the upcoming season. The ceremony will be held on Sunday night, November 2nd, when Washington hosts Seattle in Sunday Night Football. That's also the debut of the throwback alt uniforms. I mean, Art looked great in those uniforms. And they put out a picture this morning in the tweet honoring greatness on November 2nd. And it's Art Monk in his championship 1991 uniform. So I'm thrilled for Art Monk. I talked about this earlier, but now we can talk about it more, and we can take some calls because I want your thoughts on this as well. So phone lines are open, 301-230-0980, 301-230-0980. I'll net it out for you. I think Rigo should have been the next to go in, not Art. Now, again, I put together this list a while ago before they decided to officially start retiring jerseys. Remember, there was the big debate in 2020 with Dwayne Haskins taking Joe Theismann's number 7, or 2019, excuse me. And, it was so poorly handled. I mean, another just complete botch job by the owner. It's like what we got in the NFL draft this year in New York with Abdul Carter going number 3 overall, and Carter wanted to wear potentially number 56 if Lawrence Taylor said it was okay. And Giants management ownership stepped in and said, no one's ever going to wear 56 again. And that was that. That's not what happened with number 7 back in 2019. Snyder hung Joe out to dry and said it's Joe's call. No, it wasn't Joe's call. It should have been your call, and you should have said, we don't retire jerseys, but we protect them, and Joe's number 7 is a protected jersey. Dwayne, pick another number of the available numbers. But that's not what Snyder was, as we know. He loved his quarterbacks that he picked. And so Dwayne got number 7. And during that time, there was a lot of discussion about why don't they just start retiring jerseys? And they eventually got around to doing that. But I put together a list back then in 2019, 2020, that time frame. And it's the jersey numbers that I think are without debate that should be retired. Then a list of jersey numbers that are debatable in terms of whether or not they should be retired, meaning I'd be fine if the organization decided to retire them, but I'm okay if they don't. And then there was a list of jersey numbers that were right outside kind of the debatable list. The no debaters, and I think it's a list of 7 in franchise history. 9, Sonny Jurgensen, 28, Darrell Green, 33, Sammy Baugh, 42, Charlie Taylor, 44, John Riggins, 49, Bobby Mitchell, and 81, Art Monk. That's always been my no debate. If I were on, if I were part of a committee to discuss this as someone who's, followed this organization and knows a lot about the history of this organization, that would be, these are the 7 that have to be retired before we ever contemplate anybody else. Now, on the debatable list, I did include Sean Taylor at 21 because of the incredible impact he made in a very short period of time. And I called that kind of an owner prerogative thing because of the circumstances around his, obviously, the death and the career that he was probably on the verge of having and the impact he had on a lot of young fans in particular. So when they decided to start retiring jerseys, on the debatable list, I included Joe's 7, Ken Houston's 27, Larry Brown's 53, Chris Hamburger's 55, Jake's, Joe Jacoby's 66, Russ Grimm's 68, and Sam Huff's 70, even though Sam Huff's best years of his career were really as a Giant. But for contributions to the organization, Sam was on the debatable list. And then just barely outside of the debatable list, I had Doug Williams, Brian Mitchell, Pat Fisher, Monty Coleman, Dave Butts, Dexter Manley, Gary Clark, and Jerry Smith. I would not retire those jerseys. I would certainly say that you could debate, but I would end up debating that they're not deserving of being retired Ring of Honor, yes. Retired jerseys, no. So the no debate list, Sammy Baugh was always retired. Then they got to Bobby Mitchell's, then to Sonny's, then to Darrell Green's. So there are 3 remaining: Charlie Taylor, John Riggins, and Art Monk. I think, first of all, I don't think Sean Taylor's jersey should have ever been retired before any of the other jerseys that were recently retired. Sonny's, Darrell Green's. Bobby's was retired before. Sammy Baugh was as well. But all 7 of those should have gone in before Sean Taylor's. And I will tell you that when the organization decided after Bobby Mitchell's jersey was the first to be retired, when they decided to retire jerseys other than Sammy Baugh's, and Snyder selected, along with Jason Wright and others, Sean Taylor's jersey, there were a lot of former players who were not happy about that at all. A lot of former players thought Sean Taylor's jersey should not be retired, but certainly shouldn't have been retired before Sonny, before Darrell Green, before Charlie Taylor, before Art Monk, before John Riggins. I totally agreed with it, spoke to it at the time, talked to people in the organization and told them how badly they effed that up. And they said, you're not the first person to let us know this. A lot of former players have expressed their outrage, not over his jersey being retired, but being retired in front of some of these others. But again, poor institutional knowledge of the organization with the last group. So here's my thing. Art Monk, 100% deserving of having his jersey retired. He's been on my short list forever. He is number 1 in all-time receptions. He's number 1 in all-time yardage. He's second in all-time pass reception touchdowns to Charlie Taylor. Charlie Taylor, just so you know, and I know many of you do know this, Charlie Taylor for his time was considered a better player in the moment than Art Monk was in his. Okay, Charlie Taylor was an 8-time Pro Bowler, a Hall of Fame player pretty quickly after eligibility. Charlie Taylor, during his career was considered he was at one point when he retired, he was the all-time pass reception leader in an era where you didn't throw it as much. He had 649 catches. Monk, decimated 649, got to 888, and also has Charlie by almost 3,000 yards, but his 14 touchdowns fewer. But Charlie Taylor was an 8-time Pro Bowler. Art Monk was a 3-time Pro Bowler. Charlie Taylor was considered a better wide receiver, started as a running back, in his career than Art Monk was. But Monk's numbers, for the most part, in 2 critical categories, are greater than Charlie Taylor's. I think there's a debate for Charlie Taylor to go in before Art Monk as well. But for me, there's no, honestly, bigger all-time clutch performing, big game player than Riggo. Not to mention that he was, considered during those years as one of the best, even though he only made 1 Pro Bowl. As I mentioned earlier in the show, you're talking about, years in which the league just had, Eric Dickerson and Earl Campbell and Tony Dorsett, great running backs, Walter Payton, that did, beat out Riggo for all pro honors and Pro Bowl honors. Not in 84. Okay, 84, Riggo was a first-team All-Pro when he set the NFL record for rushing touchdowns. And there was a little bit of an issue with Riggo because some people considered him a fullback more than he was a halfback. But he played in the era of great running backs in both, throughout the league, both conferences. And I just think Riggo should go in before Art. And I might say it a few more times between now and November 2nd, but I'm going to leave it alone after today because I don't want – Art deserves this 100%. I'm thrilled for Art, totally thrilled for Art. I've had this, bug up my backside when they put Sean in before Sonny and before Darrell and before Art and before Riggo and before Charlie Taylor. I want them to get the order right. I wanted Sonny to go in, certainly before Sean. Charlie Taylor is not going to make it to his, eventual jersey retirement because his is coming, whether it's next year or the year after. I hope it's, Riggo next year. But I think Riggo deserves to have his jersey retired right now. The order for me would have been, after Sammy Baugh, would have been Bobby Mitchell because of the significance, followed by Sonny, followed by Darrell Green. Okay? They went Bobby Mitchell, Sean Taylor, Sonny, Darrell Green. And then after Darrell Green, I would have gone Riggo, Charlie Taylor, Monk. 301-230-0980, 301-230-0980. We're all going to be, of course, no one's going to disagree that Art Monk's jersey shouldn't be retired. Of course, it should be retired. I just feel like Riggo should have been next. What do you think? 301-230-0980. It's the Kevin Sheehan Show on the Team 980 and the team980.com.
All right, the Washington Commanders have made an announcement that the team will be retiring Art Monk's number 81 in Week 9 against the Seattle Seahawks. The team will be wearing their Super Bowl era throwbacks that released last week, and the Redskins legend still holds the team's career reception record. He also still holds the team record for career receiving yards. And we have a wide receiver extension. Former Ohio State Buckeye Garrett Wilson has agreed to a 4-year extension with the New York Jets worth $130 million and includes $90 million in guarantees. Shamar Stewart is currently weighing his options and could make a return to college. The Bengals' first-round pick is currently in a contract dispute with the team over language regarding financial guarantees. Stewart is working out with his old college team, the Texas A&M Aggies, and believes there is a path back to the college level. Cal Raleigh last night won the home run derby after facing off against Junior Caminero in the final. Raleigh becomes the first catcher to win the event and the first Mariner to win since Ken Griffey went back-to-back in 98 and 99. And finally, the Tampa Bay Rays are being sold for $1.7 billion in a deal agreed to in principle by owner Stu Sternberg. The deal is expected to close in September and will keep the Rays in Tampa for the years ahead. This update is sponsored by the Team 980 YouTube page. Just open the app, type in the Team 980, hit subscribe. Kevin Sheehan is live from 10 to 1 and Craig Hoffman from 4 to 7. Don't forget to like the streams and turn on notifications to stay up to date on all things DC sports. And that is what's trending.
Art Monk's jersey will be retired on November 2nd out in Landover. Sunday Night Football, it's scheduled for now. Could always be flexed, but I think November 2nd is safe against the Seahawks at home. It'll be the debut of their throwback alt jerseys, the championship uniforms, and Art Monk's 81 will be retired on that night. Totally deserved. He's on my list of the absolute no debate jerseys that should be retired, along with Sonny, Darryl Green, both of which have been already retired. Sammy Baugh was the one that was retired for all those years. Bobby Mitchell already retired, but 3 left on my no debate list: Charlie Taylor, John Riggins, and Art Monk, and Monk's up next. Now, totally deserved. Art's one of the greatest of all time. He is in the conversation, and you can debate it. Charlie Taylor or Art Monk is the greatest receiver in franchise history. There's nobody else in that conversation, even though Gary Clark was a great player and holds, most of the number 3 spots in the all-time franchise numbers for pass catchers list. Charlie Taylor in his day was considered to be a more, high-level elite receiver. Art was always among the best, but Charlie Taylor made 8 Pro Bowls and Art made 3. Art's long trek to the Hall of Fame was because there were a lot of NFL pundits and even Hall of Fame voters who kind of thought Art was more of the possession receiver, whereas Gary Clark and Ricky Sanders were more of the deep threats, or even Charlie Brown early in Art's career. Art was, to me, always a Hall of Fame receiver. Took him 13 years, eventually got there. He deserves the jersey to be retired. I just think Riggo should be next. If we're doing it based on the importance of the player, the contribution of the player, and they haven't done it that way because Sean Taylor went in before all of these people, right? So they haven't done it that way. But I think of the remaining jerseys that have to be retired, I think Riggo's should be next. I think you could actually make a case Charlie Taylor's could go before Art as well. So totally with Art, deserved, so happy for him. We'll be cheering the whole thing on. Because at the end of the day, it's just an order here that we're talking about. But I'm curious as to what you guys think, if this is something that bothers you. It doesn't bother me, but I would have insisted, had I been on a committee to discuss this, no, 44s is going next. John, you could argue, is the all-time iconic figure of players in franchise history. He is the all-time clutch performer in franchise history. Yes, he only has 1 Super Bowl to his credit. Been to 2, won 1. Art was a part of 3 Super Bowl winning teams. Remember, though, in 82, he didn't play in the postseason. He got injured late in the regular season and did not play in the 82 playoffs, which, by the way, it wouldn't have mattered because Riggo was rushing for 642 yards over 4 games, the most prolific postseason of rushing the football in NFL history, as he went on to win the Super Bowl MVP, and clearly his 4th and 1 run to give Washington a 20-17 lead in the 4th quarter is the most important, iconic, memorable play in franchise history. So I would have gone Riggo next. That's all. What do you think? Let's start with Athen in Annapolis. Athen, go ahead.
Hey, Kevin, I think it's very debatable because both are so iconic, but they have 7 or 8 other home games. I mean, why don't they just put Riggo in on the Dallas game? That would be perfect to do.
They're doing 1 a year. They're doing 1 a year. I guess you could do more than that, but I think the bang for the buck is to kind of spread it out here because there are only a couple left here.
Yeah, I see that, but I mean, you got 2 iconic players like that. I mean, I would agree with you with Riggo just slightly because of of everything, but Monk was at one time the all-time NFL leader. But Kevin, one thing for your podcast, I think you could talk about another subject. What about the people who belong, maybe not in retired jersey, but the Redskins Ring of Honor? Doc Walker and Mark May being one and two of them. Doc with his 50. Doc's got 50 years in this market.
No doubt.
45 in the media and 5 as a player. So I know you got other callers, but thanks for taking my call.
Yeah, well, the Ring of Honor, obviously, you get a lot more people involved in the conversation. But yeah, Doc would certainly be at the top of that list for sure. You know what, guys? Stay there on hold. Terry McLaurin is talking after an Eastern Motors commercial shoot. We're going to go to it live right now.
They've taken whatever tack they've taken, and have you now opened your mind up to being somewhere else?
I haven't got to that part yet. It has been disappointing. Going into this offseason, I thought there was going to be more progress, and I know those discussions were there at the beginning, and since OTAs and minicamp, we haven't had any discussions. We haven't talked at all, and that's tough. Obviously with camp coming around the corner, and so I haven't thought that far yet to really. See what's next in the standpoint of leaving or not, because I want to be here. I want to make that abundantly clear. Like I really appreciate this fan base, this city. This place has become my home. I've poured a lot of myself and given everything that I've can every single day since I've been here through the wins, losses, good, bad. And, but at the end of the day, you do want to feel valued and you do want to feel appreciated. And I think, how the market is today, it pretty much conveys what guys of my caliber are deserving of. And I feel like I fit that in that box because of just how I've always carried myself on and off the field and the value I know I bring to a team. And I know I bring to my teammates, and I know that I bring to an organization. And, I don't want to put myself in a position to feel like you have to beg for somebody to see your worth and your value. You feel like you've put that out there year in, year out. Everything, previous regimes, and even now, I've done everything that's been asked of me. I'm not perfect at all. I've definitely made mistakes, but I've always led with the right foot. And I've tried to put myself in a position to be a person that can be valued and respected amongst his coaches and his teammates, but also be a dog on the field. I don't want to get that mistaken. I feel like I'm one of the best receivers in this league. And, it's not because of me just feeling that way. I feel like I've proven that, and I'm going to continue to work hard to prove that. And that's kind of where things are. So I haven't really, gotten to the part of trade or not. Like I want things to work out, but at the end of the day, like it takes two to tango, you know what I mean? And so however things go these next few days, I know camp's around the corner. I'll talk to my agent and we'll go from there. But overall, you just want to be appreciated and valued for who you are and what you bring to the team, and also what you feel like you could continue to do, because best believe I don't feel like I played my best ball yet. And I still feel like I have a lot of great things that I can do and bring to a team. And so, it's disappointing that it's gotten to this point. And the toughest part is being away from my teammates, honestly, because I came at the part of OTAs and things like that with the assumption things were going to progress a lot quicker than they have. And it's disappointing because I've always been a team guy and a leader. And the great thing about, the great thing I take away is I've gotten a lot of support from my teammates. I've played golf with them. I've hung out with them. I've talked to multiple guys, and they know where I stand. They know how I feel. And I think the tough part is they have to decipher things through the media. And, they know I'm an open book. So everybody I've talked to, I've been 100 open and honest with them of where I stand and how things have been. And so I know I got their respect and their support, and I'm going to continue to prove that when I'm on the field, whenever that time is. So, just because I'm in this scenario doesn't change the fact of who I am and my character, because I'm going to continue to be Ted McLaurin no matter where I'm at. And that's who's God's built me to be. That's who I've tried to prove who I am. And I'm going to continue to walk in that.
Terry, what needs to happen next to get this thing back on track?
Well, I think, there has to be some active discussions, what I mean? Like I said, we haven't talked in over a month, and obviously with camp around the corner, it's becoming a little bit of crunch time. And, obviously you want to be in a position where you're building to what we did last year, and Jaden and I continue to build along with the offense. And that was the thing, like before I took a step back, it was things were going great on the field, and the connection and the offense and the energy was just amazing. And so to see where it was then and where it's at now is definitely disappointing. So I don't necessarily know what happens next, but without any progressive discussions, it's kind of hard to see how I step on the field. So I'm just trying to take it day by day, honestly, and I know the value that I bring. And again, I understand that there's just a whole business and things like that, but I know that I'm going to continue to play at a high level. The Lord has blessed me to stay healthy up until this point. I haven't missed a game in 5 years. I haven't missed practices. I block, I play full game, you know what I mean? And so I take extreme care of my body. Anybody in that building knows that whether it's rehab, off the field, I invest a lot of time and money into my body, and I'm going to continue to do that so I can be the best that I can when I step on the football field. So I can't really speculate what happens next. Again, I just got to take things day by day, stay in contact with my agent, and hopefully that we can have some sort of talks that are progressive. But if not, then you have to take steps from there.
Understanding it's a business, is it hard for you to separate the business from the emotion here?
Of course, to a certain degree, when you feel you have a way of feeling that what you've proven up until this point, and when you see that is put in front of you, how somebody perceives you or values you, that's disappointing. It's a little bit disrespectful to me. And again, the front office, the ownership, they have to do what's best for the team. I understand that, but I also know what I bring to a team. And I feel like I've proven that day in, day out. There hasn't been anything that they've asked me to do since they've been here that I have not done willingly, openly. And I'm not saying that that's not what I'm supposed to, that's what I'm supposed to do as a leader. But you would think when that is displayed consistently over years of time, then that would be, honored and respected. And so, again, the toughest thing is just, having to be in this limbo. And, but I haven't stopped working. I work my tail off, and no dollar amount is going to change that. No dollar amount is going to make me work harder. That's not how I'm built. But at the same time, I have to stand on my worth and my value. I've worked really hard to create that, and I know the person that God has blessed me to be. And I know that I'm a leader in that locker room. And when you have that kind of person who brings what I bring on the field, off the field, in the community, I feel that's somebody that should be valued at a very high level. Fortunately, I've proven that, but unfortunately, you can't force somebody to see value, you know what I mean? And we just got to see where that goes from here. But that's just the disappointing part, because you feel like you've done the things right. You've bought into the T of everything that this culture was building last year. And, I thought it was definitely going to be to the future of that. And so, again, I have not make any declarations of one way or another, but I'm just kind of speaking on how it's made me feel, how this offseason been, the frustrations I felt. That's all true. That's not just what people are hearing. It's coming from me. And definitely I want to just continue to take things day by day and see where it goes from there.
If teams don't progress, do you know how you'll approach camp?
Yeah, honestly, I haven't decided that yet. I'm trying to take things day by day. And, I think that's the disappointing part, where I was hoping up until this point, things would clear up a lot more than they have. And so I haven't made that decision yet. And I'm just going to see how the rest of this week goes and take it day by day and go from there.
Terry, I'm sorry. Going through even yesterday with Wilson getting his contract.
Yeah.
I think the market has been pretty well set at that position, and where do you think you fit in that market?
Yeah, I think, first of all, Garrett Wilson deserves what he was paid. I know I'm a little biased being a Buckeye, but he's a great player, and he brings a lot to his team, and he's fought through adversity as well. And I feel like that his team, not only from past regime, but the new regime that they have now, they honor and they see that, and they see what he brings to the team, and they compensate him as such. And so I can't really speculate on how that necessarily affects me. He's different than I am. But at the end of the day, what top receivers are compensated in today's NFL, wide receiver ones, I feel like I am that. And I feel like that has displayed itself not only just this cycle of receivers who have signed, but last year, and I know I'm in that category. And so it's just a matter of seeing if it makes sense for myself and if the team feels like it makes sense for them. But, it's hard to say how that transpires from here, but I know I'm deserving of what I'm asking for, and I'm willing to stand firm on that. And you just kind of got to see where it goes from there. The they feel how they feel, and I feel how I feel. You hope you come to some sort of understanding and common ground. You know what I mean? I'm not a combative person, but I am someone who's going to stand on my worth and know what I bring to a team. Not because of, I feel that way. It's because what I've proven year and year and year, and what I know I will continue to prove, Lord willing, to keep me healthy as I've been. And, you know, the tough part is just missing the time and feeling like you've missed out on building with your teammates and your quarterback and the new additions. And each team and each year is different. So when I feel like, you know, I'm a missing piece of that, you know what I mean? I feel like that definitely affects the team, you know what I mean? And hearing from my teammates and see how they feel. And, you know, they're confused and as well. And so it's just not a lot of clarity, you know what I mean? At the end of the day, I just want clarity. You know what I mean? If they don't feel like I'm part of their future, then okay, just tell me that. You know, I'm a grown adult. I can handle hard truths. You know what I mean? What I've been through in my life, I've definitely been through tough things, been through adversity, been through situations where people may not have saw my value, and that's okay, but somebody will, and I'm gonna continue to give them my all, whoever feels that way.
Terry, considering how last year for this team so much was the good vibes
Yeah.
that led to what the season became, does that make it even more surprising based on what you're saying as to that you're here?
Yeah.
It sounds like it's not even just money definitively, it's
Yeah.
other aspects. Yeah.
Definitely. You know what I mean? It's obviously the compensation, but it's kind of like the confusion. You know what I mean? All year you feel like you're a part of something. You earned the right to be a captain. You were selected by your teammates and coaches and honored of that. Throughout the season, through the ups and the downs, through the growing process of, you know, a new offense, a new coaching staff, a young quarterback, all these things. And I just tried to lead with the right way. I didn't complain. You know what I mean? Things didn't go my way, or we had tough stretches of time. Like, I was knee deep into it with everybody. And coming into the playoff stretch, I know I put my best foot forward on and off the field. And so when you have that type of production, when you know how people value you and see you and have told you to your face, and then you see how it's progressed up to this point, that's very disappointing. You feel a little bit confused. And so at this point, I'm just trying to get some clarity on that. Like, just shoot it to me straight, honestly. You know what I mean? But I know what I bring to the table, and I know what I'll continue to bring if given the opportunity. And so, yeah, that's that's the disappointing part, because you thought it was going to go one way and now you're here. So it's like, how'd that happen? And again, is big business in the NFL. But also, you know, when a player proves who they are over a course of time, and it's not just myself, but just in general, of NFL players as a whole, when you've proven who you are, you want that to be honored. You want that to be respected. You want that to be valued. And my value is so much more than a dollar amount. And that's how I feel about myself. But I'd be remiss to not acknowledge that in our business, the dollar amount is attached to someone's value. And I just want that to be reflective of who I am.
When you left after OTAs, did you get a strong indication from them that communication would continue, that discussions would progress?
Definitely. And that was a big reason why I came. You know, in 2022, that was a completely different situation. But, you know, that during that time, I left very early because the communication just wasn't there. And so when I came up into this offseason program of wanting to build on what we did last year, first and foremost, and be with my teammates, that was my intention, and feeling everybody in the building knew how engaged I was. But also there's a business side and component to it. And when you've been communicated that you want to get a deal done, you want to progress, and those aren't happening, you know, frankly, actions do speak louder than words. And that's the same that goes for me. If I go out and say, I want to be this player, I want to do this and do that, but my habits and my actions don't reflect behind that, then people are going to be looking at me sideways. And so I felt I led with the best foot forward. And, you know, after that kind of wasn't progressing the way that we would like, I just felt I needed to take a step back. And that was the disappointing part. But I got to look out for myself as well. I have a family, you know what I mean? I have my wife and future kids at some point. And, you know, I want to honor them with my value as well. And I know what I bring to the table. And so that's kind of how it got to this place where I was under understanding that things were going to progress, and they just haven't. And that's disappointing. And, you know, on the heels of camp, it's kind of like, what now? And so I just want clarity, honestly. And we'll see where it goes from here. So, you know, the deadlines obviously come up, and, you know, we'll see where it goes from there. But without any progressive talking, without any communication, it's kind of just sits here like it is.
Is there a point of no return
You know, I'm not going to really speculate on that yet. Obviously, where it stands now, it's not great. It's not good at all. And without any progression, then you have to take steps based off of where you're at. You know, I mean, there's a hope that I do want to continue to play here, and I do want to be a part of what's being built and what's going to be built. But at the same time, you know, you want to be valued by the you know, the front office and the ownership group and things like that. And, you know, it's just past just the words of it. It's, you know, the actions behind it. And I feel like I've proven who I am and who I'm going to continue to be, you know what I mean? And so, I mean, at some point, I guess you can say there's a point of no return. I don't think it's at that now, but I mean, there's a, you know, time is kind of ticking.
What is the disconnect as you see it? Is it just, I mean, beyond how they're treating you, the tone perhaps, is it just money? Is it your age? I know that's been mentioned.
Yeah.
What do you see as the disconnect?
You know, I'll try to keep the specifics of it between, you know, my agent and the team, but, you know, I think there is a disconnect of the value of what I bring to the table and how that applies to not only the fair market deal and the fair market value, but what I've proven up into this point and what I still know I can do at a very high level. And just speaking to the point of, you know, you bringing up age, like obviously that is a part of the NFL. You know, I mean, Father Time is undefeated, but I think it's unfortunate that a general data point, not just for myself, but in general, is just used and not by a case-by-case basis. In my case, I've been blessed by the Lord and the actions that I take to take care of my body. I've never had a major surgery in my entire career. Thank God for that. You know what I mean? And on top of the work that I put in. But also, I haven't missed a game in 4 or 5 years. And I don't miss practice. You know, I play every game. And so who's to say coming off this last season, I won't continue to play at a high level? I believe that. I truly do. And I know I'm going to put the work in to continue to do that at a high level and be bought in and be unselfish and be the guy that I know I've been. And to be quite frank with you, like, you know, even when it comes to guys who are approaching 30, like in my case is different, not only from a health standpoint, but this is only going to be my 7th year. A lot of people may not know my story, but at Ohio State, I really didn't play a lot in my first 2 years. There's not a lot of tread on my tires. This is the first year we made a deep playoff run. You know what I mean? And I've been extremely healthy through all of that. And so to just, I'm not under the understanding that 30 just applies to me. I'm not dismissing that completely. You know what I mean? There are data points that support that. But how come it's not okay to honor and see, okay, this may be a different case? And based on what he's proven and showing no signs of deterioration, like, you know, I feel like that should be acknowledged as well. And so in general, you hope that there's a case-by-case basis and not a group thinking of, hey, this is this age group and, you know, they fit in this age group, so this is how we're going to treat them. I don't think that's quite right. It's the business. It depends on how each organization and front office see it. So, you know, that's kind of how that is. But, you know, 30 ain't old. You know what I mean? People making it seem like I need to start getting fitted for a walker and a cane. You know what I mean? No disrespect. You know what I mean? Because with age comes wisdom. You know what I mean? And I think my game is going to continue to mature in a great way as I go out through the course of the end of my career. And I don't think that's right now. I don't think that's near. And my ability to make catches at the catch point, people call it contested catches. I call it winning at the catch point. You know what I mean? I think that'll continue to stay. My speed, I still am a 4.3 guy. I'm the same guy just in January, you know, was able to take a slant in the NFC Championship game in a screen for a touchdown. I don't think that changes in 6 months, especially without no major injuries. And so, you know, I know that was a long drawn out answer, but I just wanted to kind of, you know, address that standpoint. But the specifics of the negotiations, I want to keep, you know, in-house as much as possible, but just speaking to the point of age and things like that. And I kind of just want to touch on that.
What you mentioned you've been in communication with your teammates throughout.
Yeah.
What has that been like? How do you kind of stay abreast of what they're doing from afar?
Well, the great thing about it is I've talked to, you know, a lot of them, and offense, defense, you know, they've communicated that they miss me. They communicated that they want me out there, but they also understand it's a business as well. And they understand what I bring to the table, and they're supporting me and standing firm in that. And that means a lot to me because at the end of the day, I want their respect, and they know who I am as a person and as a player. And that's not just because of I'm saying that, is what I've tried to prove myself each and every day while I'm in that building. the person I am, pouring into the young guys, being a veteran leader and buying into a new regime and what they want to build in the ownership group as well. I've bought in completely, and the tough part is just being away from them because the camaraderie that's in that locker room is special, and you want to build on what you had last year and take it to the next level. And so not being there, that is the gap. But I know I have their support. I know that they got my back, and if the shoe's on the other foot, like, I'd have their back as well. And I think just in general with football, and when it comes to contract negotiations, like if the shoe's on the other foot and I'm sitting here and was selfish and wasn't productive last year, like, teams in those situations, they cut players, so they're asking for pay cuts. But when a guy earns it, like, it's just disappointing when there's that combativeness, that drawn out process where you feel like, okay, you've earned something, let's compensate you and not have this long drawn out process. It's a business. I do understand that, but it's just the disappointment in it. But, I'm blessed. I keep my head held high. I know who I am at the end of the day. I know who God has blessed me to be. And that doesn't change based off of how somebody else may feel or view me. I know how I view me. I know how the people in my life, I know how my teammates view me. And it's just tough to be away from them, but they know that I'm handling business. And the great thing about it, they trust and know, both based off of what they've seen and being around them, that I've been putting the work in. And whenever my time to step on the field, I'm going to continue to be who I've been and continue to get better, because I do know I can continue to get better like I've shown.
Terry, have you heard from Jayden specifically?
Yeah, I have.
McLaurin, who's holding a press conference after an Eastern Motors advertising shoot.
I'll keep the specifics between us, but it's great to have his support, honestly, and to know he has my back, and to see how we've grown in our relationship, not just on the field but off the field. And so to know the value you bring to your quarterback, and to know that he sees and feels that means a lot to me. It really does. And he knows I got his back too, not on the field but as a person. We've had a lot of personal talks, not just now but over the course of his entire first year together. And him and I haven't scratched the surface as what we can do as a duo. You know what I mean? From, we as a team, we had a slow start to the season. We had some hiccups, but we were cooking by the end of the year. You know what I mean? And I feel like with the additions that have been made as well, like, that is only going to help everything. But I know what I bring to the table, and I feel like he does too. And I truly believe we need each other. And so we'll see where it goes from there. I'm going to continue to talk to him and stay in contact with him, because he's a great player, but he's even a better person. So when you got guys like that, Zach, Frankie, Quan, Reeves, just to name just a few guys who have reached out and checked in on me and see how I'm doing and say they support me and got my back. That means a lot. And they know I'll do the same for them, because if they didn't, I don't think they would reach out. That's the thing. You can't BS. You could, I'm going to shoot straight. Some guys could kind of BS the media. You could portray yourself on social media a certain way. You can't BS the guys in that locker room. They know who you are. They know what you bring to the table. They know over a consistent amount of time the character and the person you are. And so to see that those guys see that in me and they want me to be a part of what's being built means everything to me. And I just want to be, back with them and build, if that makes sense.
How much has ownership been involved to this point? And do you feel that it's that relation? How's that relationship going for you?
Yeah, I mean, in the past, the relationship has definitely been great. I've had personal, conversations with Josh. I've had personal conversations with Mitchell Rails, Mark Hine, Magic, and so up until this point, my understanding is like I'm a big part of what they want to continue to build here. There hasn't been any personal communication. Mitchell Rails and I kind of had a few texts back over the offseason, but it wasn't like contractual. But, I think there's personal relationships that I've built there, and I just want them to, be clear with me and honest, of if they see me as part of this future or not, and I can handle that. And we move forward. But I'm hoping that they see who I've been, not even just before DQ and AP got here, but who I was when it was terrible. When things were adverse, when there was a lot of chaos going on, I still held firm and strong, and I held my head held high, and I was a leader. I'm gonna continue to do that when things are good. Like, things are good or bad doesn't change who I am. Money doesn't change who I am. It's the character of who I've proven to be. And so hopefully, they see that value, and, they make that a priority to get some finality to this one way or another.
2 more questions.
I know you did some traveling.
Yeah.
But where have you worked out generally aside from that?
Yeah, I mean, I've worked out in Florida over the off season. That's kind of my place that I go to work out. I've worked out here. Obviously, when I wasn't missing out on OTAs, I have weight room in my house, and I haven't missed any days. I'm 208 pounds sitting right here, healthy as hell, fast, and in good spirits. And that's the thing. Like, the money is not what motivates me. It's to be the best person I can be on the field, to bring out the best in myself. I want to be able to walk away from this game knowing that I gave everything I got, that I stayed true to who I was, that I didn't, sell out or try to tear somebody down to build myself up. I've taken my L's and my licks on the chin, and I haven't complained, and I stayed strong during that. And I put in the work no matter what's going on around me. And so I've definitely worked out here. I've worked out in Florida, and I was in Italy getting it in, waking up at 6 a.m. For real, and that's just who I am. And I know when I step on the field, whenever that time comes again, like, I'm gonna be ready. And I know I put the work in to build off of what I did last year. And so I'm looking forward to that. And even on Chad Englehart's birthday, I sent him a picture of the squat rack with 435 on it. Just tell him happy birthday. Just that's just who I am, and people in that building know that, and it's who I've been. That's who I'm going to continue to be.
How was Italy?
It was beautiful. My wife and I had a great time. That was my first time in Europe, and just to see the architecture, to see the history was really cool. And just, I'm really blessed to be able to be in this position, to be able to not only meet great people, but to earn a great living, living my dream, and seeing the world. Like, I don't want to get emotional, but I never saw my life coming this far. My dream was always to make it to the league, but I never saw the position I'd be in today, and the respect I'd have from this community, these people who I've just given my heart to, and they gave it to me back. You know what I mean? And but yeah, Italy was amazing. Went to Rome. We went to Amalfi Coast, Positano. We went to Florence. We went to Venice. I learned some great Italian. I had a great Italian food. I think I'm good off of.
Let's hear some of that great.
Okay. I just know basic stuff. So, all right. But I think bene is just something. It means good, like bene. So like how you do? Yeah, you know what I'm saying. So bene. Buongiorno. The people in Florence are very personable. So, I'm coming down the stairs, buongiorno. So it's like, let me get you back, buongiorno. So my wife was kind of correcting me. I started they make great espresso over there. I've never been a coffee guy. And so I started having some espresso. I was calling it espresso. And my wife was like, it's espresso. And so like, I made sure I got that right. But it was a great experience. And, it's actually kind of crazy. Like, I'm a low-key guy, you know what I mean? And over there, I was getting recognized like left and right.
Really?
Yeah, like by obviously travelers and football fans, but one of our servers at the place that we stayed in Positano, he's like, yeah, you play American football, you big guy. So everybody's asking me like, you see a big guy, and I'm, in the hotel we were, there's big running steps. So I'm running the steps from the top to the bottom, and they're like, who are you? What do you do? You know what I mean? And so just ingratiating myself into that culture with my wife and creating new experiences and great memories and meeting great people was something that was unbelievable. And definitely am glad to be back and figure out what's next.
I can do two non-contractual.
Yeah.
Art Monk announced today that
Yeah.
he's going in as Jersey's being retired as
Yeah.
a fellow receiver. I'm not sure how much you've dealt with Art, but your thoughts on 81 being never worn again?
Man, as it should be. He's the greatest receiver that has played in our organization, in my opinion. He's a Hall of Famer for a reason. And, I think a few years ago, Gary Clark, Ricky Sanders, Art Monk, just to name a few, we all went to dinner at Prime in Ashburn. And, my understanding was, Art is a chill, laid back guy back in Florida. And so for him to come out and spend his time and spend his wisdom with us was something that I couldn't, you can't put a dollar amount on that. And I still take away the conversation we had at that dinner unbelievably.
All right, we are going to bail on it. There's only another question left. Terry's last few are all about his Italy trip and Art Monk's retired jersey announcement earlier today. There was a lot to it. Bottom line is he is very frustrated, irked at the whole process, and you can tell he's lost some trust in the process as well. Talked a lot, though. There's a lot to get to. Chris will tackle it next. I'll be back tomorrow to discuss it. Enjoy it. Back tomorrow. See ya.